the new lady, the new legislator. Welcome back to Truth Hurts, where we expose corrupt politicians lying corporate media. I'm Jake Duesenberg, your host. We're broadcasting live from Roseville, Minnesota, in the belly of the beast, the liberal zombie apocalypse of Minneapolis and St. Paul. And boy, do we have a good show for you. We're starting a little early because we've got an epic showdown at the Minnesota Capitol. Isn't that right there, MAGA Jesse?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, this is some unprecedented times, and I'm glad that we were on top of it. And yeah, no, it's going to be crazy in both the House and the Senate. More importantly, the House, because the Republicans currently hold a majority in the House, and the Democrats are doing everything in their power to block the Republicans from claiming that majority and using it. So it's going to be massive to see exactly how this battle is going to shake out between Steve Simon and the Republicans. Will Steve Simon give up the gavel? Will they have to physically remove Steve Simon from the chamber? I mean, there's so much at stake here. I can't wait to see how it all unfolds. And it looks like the Republicans actually have a spine and will actually try to push this thing through here today.
We will be going to the floor, the Minnesota House, live when they start. They will be gaveling in at noon per the, is that state stat? No, that's the Constitution, per the Constitution. State statute. Now I can't remember. We've sorted this stuff out. My memory's just not perfect right now.
For what?
Well, it says noon on the first day of session. I can't remember that one was from the Constitution.
Oh, I think that's in statute. Right.
That's in statute. Okay,
right.
Got it. All right, well, we're going to go through a lot of what's behind this whole mess. Running the dials is always Mr. Deep State himself. Dawson, how you doing there, Dawson?
I'm good. I'm back from the dead. That was a terrible sickness, but now I'm hungry, and we've got a show to do. So
hopefully this is exciting to someone like you that's not even that political.
I'm hoping for a fight, yeah.
We'll be reading comments on, we'll try to everyone. We're on Facebook, Twitter, X, YouTube, but Rumble will be our main place to read the comments. What do we got in the comment section already?
Yeah, we got Bill Dangsvin says, I can't wait to see Steve Simon get arrested. So Bill Dangsvin has some ideas. We got Don2448 saying, watching excitedly, and Paisley Prime saying, listening live from Roseville. So got some people tuning in already.
If you want to interrupt us anytime, just hit that Rumble rant, and we will read your comment live. We'll interrupt whatever we're talking about. Once the session starts and important things are happening, and by important I mean like actual moves that are happening on the floor, we'll shut up. I watch some live streams, and I don't like it when people talk over things that are important. So we'll shut up and we'll let those things transpire. But what we're going to do is give you color commentary so you understand what's going on. We understand the legislative process. That's what our show is all about, is we're political operatives, and we kind of try to give you the behind-the-scenes stuff. Now, if you want to be a supporter of our show, a premium subscriber, you can go to truthhurtsnews.com and click on Support Us, and that helps us. It's $8 a month or $88 a year. You get a month off. You also get access to our super secret post show, which we give you rumors and gossip and intel that we find out about Minnesota politics. Actually, politics just in general. It's not just Minnesota. So we're averaging a bunch of new subscribers every episode. I hope you're one of them. Also, we're brought to you by Warren Wessel of Keller Williams Realty. If you're looking to buy a home or sell a home, give my good friend Warren a call at 612-419-7453. He's not only a great real estate agent, but he also believes the things that you and I believe in. Also, we're brought to you by John Galt Mortgage Company. Now, these guys, actually, Andrew from John Galt sent me a pretty good meme about the secret swearing in ceremony the Democrats held on Sunday night. These guys are top-notch meme game at johngaltmortgage.com. They have to tell people they're not just memes. They are an actual company. So if you're buying a home, try to finance that home through John Galt Mortgage. What's the harm? Give them a chance. They might beat out the competitors at financing that home. And once again, supporting good believers. Also brought to you by Alpine Cabinetry in St. Cloud, Minnesota. Third sponsor, another great patriot, Steve, a good patriot. Oh, I see my good friend Andy Parrish, who is a radio show host down in La Crosse, Wisconsin, says you need a flash graphic. This is a Truth Hurts news alert. Yeah, but then we'll probably go down the road of Fox News where everything's an alert. You know how they do that? Yeah. This is another Fox News alert. It's like at some point it's the boy that cried wolf.
Yeah, Fox News alerts now just are like nothing because everything is a news alert apparently.
Right. Mom123G, I've never seen this. Thank you for streaming this. Well, thank you for tuning in, Mom123G. I believe that's the first time she's been on. So that's good. A good new listener. You don't have to be watching live. Most of our audience watches after the fact. Hopefully, oh, look, Drew Roach. We got Drew Roach interview. See, this is what they do before they actually start the session. They have the new legislators. This is our very own Drew Roach from Farmington, Minnesota. And he is He's got quite a swearing in today. Before we get started, just in case you don't know what's going on in Minnesota. I mean, we wouldn't usually be broadcasting live from the start of a session because, quite frankly, it's really boring usually. It's a dog and pony show. Nothing happens. But in this case, a lot is happening. Dawson, pull up to A3. This is an article from truthhurtsnews.com. And I want to go. So this is the article is entitled "Minnesota Democrats Conduct Secret Illegal Swearing-In Ceremony. What House GOP Must Do Now." Nope, that's the A2. There we go. Yep. A3. Scroll down. I got it bulletized. I did the Cliff Notes here. This is the Cliff Notes on, there you go, right there, on how we got to the point we are right now. So if you guys remember November's election, the Republican and Democrats both won 67 House seats. Now, 40B, which is a Democrat district, okay, in that case, a month and a half later, it was determined by a judge that the Democrat did not establish residency in the district. So basically, he cheated to win an election. And so the judge determined that he should not be placed into the membership of the Minnesota House. It was Curtis Johnson and the Democrats that decided not to appeal that decision to the Supreme Court. And even if they did, the final decider of the seats of the Minnesota House is the actual Minnesota House. That's in the Constitution. So anyhow, he decided he is not going to pursue it. So that created a special election. In this case, that special election shouldn't actually take place until February. Tim Walz breaking the law. We won't go down that road. But at very least, even if Tim Walz wins in court, the special election isn't until another 2 weeks. So that means the Republicans have a 67 to 66 lead over the Democrats. And now both the Democrats and Republicans have a speaker designate, and the designate on the Democrat side is Melissa Hortman, and the one on the Republican side is Lisa Demuth. And so what ends up happening is if there was a tie, they'd both show up, and there'd be 67 votes, likely, unless some abstained or voted for someone else. You have to have a majority if there was a 67, 134 member House. In this case, there's not. The Democrats cheated. There's 133 members. So all you need to become the Speaker of the House is to get 67 votes. So every Republican votes one way, even if it's multiple ballots. Speaker designate Lisa Demuth or somebody else will become the Speaker of the House. And it's because of that and the fact that in House District 54A, Brad Tabke, a Democrat incumbent, was declared the victor of his election by a 14-point margin, but it was later discovered that in Scott County, an election official threw away 20 ballots in the trash. And really, it should be 21. We just ignore that one in the other precinct. But 20 ballots, so it's more than the margin, okay? Now, because of that and some other discrepancies, Republicans are saying we are the judges of who are the members of this body, and therefore there needs to be another election. And that's a fair request because, quite frankly, 20 people were disenfranchised. All right, so that's going to be determined today. Because of those two things, the Democrats now have threatened not to show up for session. And as we look at 5 minutes in the future, we don't believe Democrats are going to be in the Minnesota House chamber. I'm shocked they haven't gone to the House floor yet. They're still doing their interviews with the new members, but any moment they will be going to the House floor. What's up, Dustin?
So I don't understand. Are they doing it out of like protest? They're like,
I didn't even think about mentioning the last bullet point there, and the fact that it's not just protest. It's they believe, and they're arguing, that if they don't show up on day one, then there won't be a quorum, which they argue is a majority of the House, which is 134 members. The Republicans argue a quorum is a majority of the members that are elected, and there's only 133, and therefore they need 67 to conduct business. Now, the Democrats have this really interesting thing. The Secretary of State, Steve Simon, who is a Democrat, is supposed to, by the law, gavel in the legislative session. Nowhere in the Constitution does it say this. It says in the Constitution that the House determines its presiding officer. Steve Simon is saying, I'm the presiding officer and I will adjourn if there's not 68 members. And so by the Democrats saying we're not coming, then they're going to hold up a quorum, and Steve Simon is apparently going to say, you guys are adjourned. Well, the Republicans, at least what we believe, are actually going to have a backbone and say, you're not adjourning the legislature. This is a separations of power, and the executive branch can't do this. One last fact that I got to mention here is the fact that if there's sex, after they do a roll call vote, essentially they swear in. That's what you do. That's like the first action is swearing in. And they usually have a Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Democrats not going to the legislature today. And by the way, the law says they shall be there. It says they're supposed to be there. So by them not going, they held a secret swearing in ceremony. And that's what's in this article. Sunday night at the Minnesota Historical Center, which is unprecedented. The legislature hasn't even started and they're swearing in secrecy. It wasn't until after the fact that the media caught wind that this even happened. And it was published, I think we saw a picture Monday afternoon. This is insanity. So we are 3 minutes away from the Minnesota House session starting. And at this point, we believe it's only going to be Republicans in the chamber, which, Jesse, the way I look at it is that means there's 67 members of the Minnesota House until the other 66 show up. There's 67 members. A quorum is 34. And a majority is 34 to actually pass bills and to get a speaker. That's the way I look at it.
Right, because these Democrats are not sworn in. What the Democrats are going to be arguing is about Brad Tabke, because they do not want to have the Brad Tabke 54A race go to a special election, even though it should for all the reasons that you described. Of course, the court case ruling came out today, which, of course, will most likely be appealed. But the judge did rule in Brad Tabke's favor. However, like you say, this is completely up to the legislature to decide. So the House of Representatives, as the judge of their election returns, should not accept an election that was decided by such a slim margin when more ballots were thrown away than that margin of victory. So the House of Representatives is setting up a very, very interesting battle, and the 54A race is why the Democrats are freaking out right now. Of course, the Truth Hurts News and Action for Liberty had been leading on that all along the way. Very quickly, let's go into
No, I don't think we're going to get a chance. Dawson,
Okay.
Because you brought up something I forgot to mention, that a court did rule this morning, great timing court, that they think that the election should stand in 54 in Tabke. Pull up my my Twitter page, my X account, and you'll see right here on the top, you know who argued that the court's opinion doesn't matter in this whole case? It was actually Brad Tabke himself. This is interesting. The Democrats say, well, it's been determined. Now Republicans are trying to throw out a duly elected legislator. No, the person that was determined here said that the court's opinion doesn't matter. It's only advisory. Is Brad Tabke right there? You see it. He says in the argument in front of the court yesterday, this court's decision is purely advisory. The actual decision of who gets placed is the Minnesota House. So Republicans are doing exactly what Brad Tabke said. All right, sorry, I wanted to get that in there. I don't think we're going to have time because it's new now.
I'll just very quickly say what's going on. People can check out the article on their own if they want to check it out. But there has been a new power-sharing agreement between Mark Johnson, Rhino Mark Johnson, and the Democrats, Aaron Murphy, who is the Democrat Senate leader. We'll get into it later. But yeah, the Senate president race, Rhino... Jeremy Miller is running, and that's a problem.
Okay, let's zoom in. Let's get that big screen. And as you guys can see right now, the Minnesota House on the left side is empty. The Democrats are not in session right now, so they did hold firm on their threat. This is, I mean, guys, I just got to say, these are usually really boring. We would not find this worthwhile of bringing you live coverage of. However, we have to bring live coverage of this because right now we're in a constitutional crisis. Is Steve Simon, a member of the executive branch, really going to try to take over the legislative branch of government? Article 3 of the Constitution, Minnesota Constitution, says that not one person of another branch could take over the powers of another branch of government. It seems really important that doesn't happen. And the key player we're going to see today is probably Harry Nisko, which you can see kind of in the top left of your screen. He is the majority leader of the Republican caucus and a pretty smart cookie, especially when it comes to legality. And so we're going to assume he's going to be doing most of the fighting today. I see your friend Walter Hudson in the front there. Oh, there's Drew Roach right there behind Walter.
And I'm seeing on the Senate side, the Senate president race is also going to be going on. The Republicans and Democrats are planning on having a power sharing agreement where they would each have a co-president for a couple of weeks. That's ridiculous. And they want to nominate Jeremy Miller, who is on the ethics committee, who has helped cover up the audio for a secret meeting that took place on the ethics committee relating to Nicole Mitchell. Republicans need to force Jeremy Miller to release that audio in order to get their vote. So I think that Senate Republicans need to demand something for their vote. The hidden audio for the ethics committee meeting related to Nicole Mitchell, I think, is just one thing that they could demand out of Jeremy Miller. And we may see a battle on the Senate floor as well, but of course the House is going to be nuts. As we can see, there's no Democrats in the gallery there.
They're also, at least by my watch, which is on the international clock, is 12:02, and they're supposed to be gaveling in at noon. So is Steve Simon going to shirk his responsibilities as well? Mm-hmm. By law, Minnesota statute
and
303, Minnesota statute 505.
Right. And Steve Simon also, he appointed Republican Peggy Scott to serve as the clerk pro temp. And according to my research of the House rules, it should be according to the clerk pro temp to control the microphones, the audio, the video. So the recordings and everything should not be shut off. If the technicians shut it off, it shows that they're completely controlled by the Democrats. They need to make sure that all of this is recorded. It's going to be, if the technicians decide to side with the Democrats and withhold information that should be transparent to the public, especially a floor session like this, it will show that the Republicans need to take a whole new course of action.
And by the way, so people know, we do have a contingency plan. We have someone on the House floor that could go live. The Secretary of State, so here we go. Is he not even going to show up? That's the other question.
Right.
Steve Simon usually comes in that middle door. This is done at noon. It's required by law to be done at noon. It's 12:03. It's at some point, I don't know how long the Republicans wait. 5 minutes, Jesse?
Yeah,
5 minutes, and they just go, we're going to start the session, right? It's supposed to happen right now.
Sounds like it is.
Honorable Steve
Okay.
Simon, Minnesota Secretary.
Oh, I didn't even see he was back there. He's kind of a man of small stature.
Is he getting a standing ovation?
They should have actually just not clapped.
Yeah, I don't know if they should be doing that this time here.
Is this guy
Trying to buy some goodwill before it goes south.
This is unprecedented. We'll see how it goes, guys. Biggest speech of his life, right? They'll have an invocation, pledge allegiance too. So he's gavelled in now.
Hour of 12 o'clock having arrived, and in obedience to the laws of the state of Minnesota, including Minnesota Statute 5.05, it becomes my duty as your Secretary of State to call the members of the Minnesota House of Representatives to order. As a proud former member of this body, it is truly my honor to be here. This is a day to celebrate. For returning members-elect, welcome back. For new members-elect, welcome to the Minnesota House of Representatives, and welcome to Minnesota history, because you are now a part of it.
Oh, yeah.
You are making a mark today that no one can ever take away from you. All of you, both new and returning, should be proud on this day. You worked hard to get here. Your communities sent you here because they saw something in you.
Yes, they sent
They have
the
faith in
Democrats
you.
there too, did they not?
They've put
Where are the
their
Democrats?
trust in you. In turn, they expect a lot from you. Thank you for your service to Minnesota. Thanks to your families for enabling you to be here. Thanks for the work you'll do. May that work be fulfilling, rewarding, and successful. At this point,
that's
I will
crazy.
appoint as clerk pro tem Representative-elect Peggy Scott from District 31B.
Okay, there she is in the pink down there in the bottom. She's going to go take... Now, she's going to do a roll call of the members by House district. Now, this will be interesting because every Democrat district will not have
Right.
a response.
Will she read the Democrat districts, and will she read 54A?
Of course.
I now
It's the
call
drama.
on
She should not
Pastor
read
Ben
54A.
Myatt
Oh,
to
first they're
offer
going to do
a
invocation,
prayer.
then they'll do the pledge.
Right.
And then they'd swear in mass
Please
after
rise.
the roll call. And the roll call will take a little bit of time. So we'll go through a couple of them, and we'll keep it quiet for the prayer, I think.
Heavenly Father, we stand here humbled and in awe by how great you are. Thank you for being present here today in this room on this special day for all these representatives. God, we ask for your continued blessing in all their lives and the lives of their families. God, bless the sacrifices that they have made, all future sacrifices to come. The people of Minnesota are so grateful for those sacrifices, and to know that these representatives are fighting so hard to bring Minnesota to a greater place. I pray for every wife, husband, and child, and ask for a special blessing over them, for their willingness to let their loved ones put in the time needed to make the important decisions for our state. I know some days are hard, but God, I ask that you comfort them in those hard days. We pray for all the support staff and their families, for I know that the life for these representatives would be far more difficult if they didn't have them. May God bless you in all your sacrifices that you've had to make. And God, most importantly, I pray for unity in this room. I know that this year presents a lot of challenges for those in this room, but I know if they are willing to allow you to guide them through those hard conversations, Minnesota will succeed in a way that it never has before. So God, we ask, give these leaders in this room your wisdom, your discernment in all things. I pray that they would make the daily choice to seek your wisdom and to be merciful to each other and to all people, no matter the circumstances. And to the leaders that stand in this room, I ask that they would stand for truth above anything else. I pray that you provide them with all that they could ever need so that they can serve our great state of Minnesota well. I pray all this in your most holy, precious name. Amen.
Our chaplain for today is Youth, Worship, and Life Group Pastor Ben Myatt from Watermark Church in Stillwater, Minnesota. He also happens to be the son-in-law of Representative and Speaker-designate Lisa Gamuth. Members and guests, please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, in the top left, you see Patrick Murphy. He is the assumed chief clerk.
The
But
clerk
that has not.
pro tem will call the roll by
The
legislative
pro tem is
district.
just a position temporary until the chief clerk is voted on.
District
which might not happen today.
1A, John Burkle.
So we're starting with Republicans here.
Burkle, present.
We're not going to get a Democrat
District
until
1B,
4.
Steve
House
Gander.
District, Senate District 4.
Gander, present. District 2A,
What is it,
Bedell
4A?
Duran
Can't remember
Jr.
which one's the Democrat district.
District 2B, Matt Bliss. District 3A, Roger Scraba. Scraba, present. District 3B, Natalie Zeliznikar.
Okay, get ready. Now we're going to have the first
Zeliznikar, present.
absent Democrat in Senate District 4.
District 4A, Heather M. Keeler.
Oh, silence.
District 4B, Jim Joy. Joy, present. District 5A, Krista Knutson.
Now, we don't get to a Democrat because these are rural districts,
Knutson, present.
and I'm doing this on the
District
fly. I'm
5B.
thinking
Yeah,
on
it's
until
8A,
14.
Wiener.
8B.
What's that?
8A and 8B are next
Wiener,
for Democrats.
present. District
8A and 8B?
6A, Ben Davis.
What?
Pete Johnson, Kozlowski.
Davis,
They're an
present.
8? Oh,
District 6B,
Duluth, duh.
Josh
Yep,
Heinzman.
totally blinked out there. You're right.
Heinzman,
I'm thinking like
present.
St. Cloud was next up in
District
14.
7A, Spencer Igo. Igo, present. District 7B, Cal Warwas. Warwas, present. District 8A, Peter Johnson.
Pause for dramatic
District
effect.
8B, Alicia Lish Kozlowski.
Who do you think those people are
District
saying on the
9A.
Democrat side?
That's
Jeff
the
Backer.
staff?
pages,
Oh, okay.
Backer, present.
which is
District
not needed, but
9B,
I'm sure they got to
Tom
get paid.
Murphy.
I'm going to take this off for now because they're going to go through
Murphy,
67 total Senate districts, 134 House districts. Of course, 40B doesn't have 40A? 40A.
40.
40, which one is it? Now I'm 48. House District 48 doesn't actually have a. Now I'm starting to second guess myself.
It's 40B.
It's 40B. Okay, there you go. 40B doesn't actually have a member because the Democrats cheated on that one. So they're going to go through this probably another 5 or so minutes. Obviously, every time they get the Democrats, it'll be kind of dramatic effect. This has never happened before, just so you guys know. Now, there are times where quorums are held up. I can think of very famous one. Wisconsin's state assembly did this, and state senate or was it just the state senate? Maybe it was just the state senate. During Scott Walker's, I mean, they were really minor reforms, to be honest with you, but the Democrats fled to Illinois so that the sergeant arms didn't have jurisdiction in another state. Like, literally, you had Democrats in Wisconsin flee the state to hold up a quorum because essentially, if members aren't present in a lot of these legislatures, the sergeant arms can be compelled to go get the members. And so the Democrats fled to Illinois where the sergeant arm has absolutely no jurisdiction because he is a law enforcement officer. All right, so remember that time that Melissa Hortman had the sergeant arm call us?
Yeah.
Those corrupt bastards. All right, so
Yeah, and they're doing the same thing in the Senate right now. They got Sandy Pappas as the clerk pro temp, pay to play Pappas. So she's reading through the roll as well. They just went through the prayer, so very similar ways of opening session.
right now, when she gets done with this, there should be bringing on a chief or a justice of the Supreme Court to do a mass swearing in of the members.
Yeah, Simon said it was going to be Natalie Hudson.
Right. Now, here's what I think. You can't be a member. Actually, let's go back to the article real quick, Dawson. Is this hard for me to go take the live feed and go to an article?
I mean, it ain't easy.
Okay, we don't need the article. Let me just read the Minnesota Constitution then for you, because I don't want to make your job harder on this one. So, in the Minnesota Constitution, I got it somewhere in this article. One second here.
Present. District 20B, Stephen E. Jacob.
I was thinking it was the article. I think maybe it was.
Present.
Oh yeah, it's statute 305. Oh, look at this new angle here.
Schumacher, present.
They're getting artistic with it.
District
They
21B,
are.
Like to see it.
Fogelman.
Wow. This is Minnesota Statute 305. It's organization. It says at noon of the day appointed for convening the legislature, the members shall meet in their respective chambers. Now, this is key. It says they shall meet in their respective chambers. A Minnesota statute requires, that's what shall means, requires that they meet in the chambers. So first of all, if you allege that you're a member because you have an election certificate and you're not there, you're breaking the law, okay? Which all Democrats are allegedly doing that. The lieutenant governor shall call the Senate to order and the Secretary of State the House of Representatives, okay? So by law, the House is called to order by a Secretary of State. In the absence of either officer, the oldest member present shall act in the officer's place. The person so acting shall appoint from the members present a clerk pro tem, which Peggy Scott has been nominated for that and is acting in that role, who shall call the legislative districts in the order of their members. As each is called, the persons claiming to be members from each shall present their certificates to be filled. Once again, each member shall, and so we have 66 members, the whole DFL caucus. That is not doing it against the state statute. And then the last part of this statute, this is 3.05. All whose certificates are so presented shall then stand and be sworn in. Now, my thinking here is if you swear in, or if you are not present for presenting your certificate and swearing in, are you a member? I don't think you are a member of the Minnesota House. So that means a lot of things. First of all, I think you should have no say over the governance of the chamber. And so therefore a majority today is 34 because that's a majority of 67. The second thing, Jesse, call me crazy, but they shouldn't get paid. This is the first day of your job. Imagine you got hired by someone, and on the first day of your job, you didn't show up to work. What do you think is going to happen to you? They're not showing up to work, which is required by law. They're not showing up to work, but they are supposedly getting paid. How are they getting paid? They're not members. We should only be paying people who are members.
Right, and especially the fact that the Senate Democrats are completely there. And so it just shows that the House Democrats are clearly the people who are trying to obstruct the proceedings.
That's right. Okay, I'm just losing my cool. What number are we on? I don't have my headset on.
West present. 32B.
Let's see
32B.
here. I think she just said
Matt
no.
Norris.
Yeah.
Matt Norris. He's gone. That's like 30-something.
Yeah,
District
32A. So we're about halfway
33A.
through.
33. Okay, we're only
Patty
halfway through.
Anderson.
Okay, so I'm gonna keep going here because we're not gonna. I know you guys see live feeds and people think they're what they have to say is so important, so they talk over important things. We're not gonna do that. That's why we never live stream like a Trump debate. Like, what are we gonna outshine Donald Trump? No, of course not. So to me, it's like we'll get over the boring stuff, but we want to make sure you guys hear the things that are important. My thinking is, after they do the oath of office, that's when everything goes down. So they'll bring on a Chief Justice, then they're going to swear in, and then the fireworks are going to go off, and we think Steve Simon's going to try to adjourn them, and that's going to not be well accepted by the body. Now, if the media services cut off the camera and audio, we have a backup plan. I hope we don't have to, but we have someone on the floor that will bring us live coverage.
Well, I mean,
it'll
every
be
single
really
one of those
interesting.
representatives should start filming it for transparency purposes.
Right.
And, at least go on Facebook Live or whatever the means of doing it is. If you're a representative and they shut off the cameras, you need to make sure that your constituents know what's going on while the cameras are turned off. So, these representatives need to be ready for anything at this point.
Yeah, and by the way, usually it's hard to get into the chambers on the first day because it's reserved for family and friends, right? Because you don't want to. It's a big day for a lot of people who are swearing in for the first time. Frozen Man North, that seems like a new person. Thank you for joining us, Frozen Man North. 20 votes thrown out and 14 lost, and no redo. That's illegal. And he's obviously referencing in Minnesota House District 54A, 20 votes, technically 21. We always forget that one in the precinct because they kind of thought it was an anomaly, but
Here,
they
hold on a
admitted.
second. Let's listen up for 40B here to see what she says on 40B.
District 40A, Kelly Moeller. District 40B, vacant.
Nice. Okay, so at least she's noticing, noting that in the record.
Good to note that.
Yep.
Now it's technically
Well,
vacant, and
and-
now 22 days from now, Governor Walz can call a special session, right? Or special election.
And I also think that strategically she should not read 54A or say that pending, because it is a pending, it's a pending case.
Well, yeah. What do you got, Dawson?
My question is, so when it comes to these laws that we're like thinking about what they could do, whose job is it to look through the rules and say this is how we're going about it? It's not the House's job. That would be the.
In this case, it is the House's job
Really?
because it's the House that polices itself, right?
Oh,
You certainly wouldn't want.
I see.
You
Okay.
so this is a big division of powers thing. That we shouldn't have a court deciding it. We shouldn't also, and that's what the Democrats are going to threaten when they elect Speaker Demuth today. If they do, they're going to argue in front of courts to throw that out. But it's like the courts should not determine what happens in the legislature. Also, what the Democrats are going to try to do, Steve Simon, who's on the far left there, the Secretary of State, that is an executive branch of our government, is going to try to just take over the powers as a presiding officer indefinitely. Now, the Minnesota Constitution does not ever give him that power. It doesn't at all. In fact, it's not until you get into state statutes where it says anything about the Secretary of State presiding over the House. And clearly that's a ceremonial role because clearly Democrats wouldn't argue Trump can just go to the United States Congress and take over the Congress, right? You guys would have an issue with Donald Trump just going to Congress or the Senate and saying, you guys are going to follow what I'm going to do, right? You'd have a problem with that, right? Okay, so the executive branch needs to be separated from the legislative branch.
So in the Minnesota's legislature, the job is not to interpret the Constitution when it has, or the job is to interpret the Constitution when it's affecting their rules.
Well, the problem with the Constitution is it doesn't protrude fangs and bite its aggressors. And so it's up to the people in positions of authority or power to police themselves, right? A lot of people abdicate that job to the courts, and the courts have been very bad at upholding the Constitution. And quite frankly, that wasn't the original design of our federal government. Hold that thought. So what does the Constitution say? Because that's the important thing. And in the Minnesota Constitution, it's very clear in Article 4, Section 15, which is called officers, each house shall elect its presiding officer. So if Steve Simon is going to declare him the presiding officer of the Minnesota House today, because of statute 505, by the way, a statute can't trump the Minnesota Constitution. It can't be contrary to the Minnesota Constitution, because if you can just write a statute that...
Hold on a second. 54A is coming up here.
Okay. I'll get to that point in a second. Let's hear what they say in 54A. That's Brad
District
Tepke.
52A, Liz Ryer.
Oh, I thought it was coming up quicker.
Well, that's okay. But by the way, I don't think it's controversial to still do the thing on 54A, but I think it's a good point. Maybe they do something goofy on that.
Right. I think they should note it in the record.
We'll see what should they note? Vacant?
Right. That you can't accept the certificate.
District 53B, Rick Hansen. District 54A, Brad Tepke.
Okay, so Brad Tepke
District 54B
is arguing he should be a legislator and doesn't show up for the...
Right.
If you argue that they should abide by the election in your district, which has 20 ballots that were thrown in the trash...
If you think Brad Tepke should be seated,
show up.
he has to be there to be seated.
Yes.
And on the Senate side, I just want to let people know that Jeremy Miller and Bobby Joe Champion have been sworn in as the co-presiding officers of the Senate. So...
Was there an actual vote for it?
I think it was just a party line. It didn't show me on the screen what the vote was, so I'd have to be
So we got
listening.
2 Democrats presiding over the Senate. That's the news story there, because
yeah.
he's a huge rhino.
If we have, we're talking about the Constitution is saying you need to show up for your job here. If you don't,
No, Minnesota Constitution...
which one is saying that?
Well, let me get to that here in just a second. So going back to officers, it says each house shall elect its presiding officer, okay? So it says in the Constitution that the House determines its presiding officer. So if Steve Simon from the executive branch says, no, I'm your presiding officer because of state statute, that does not come into play. This is very important to understand constitutionally, because if you can just write a state statute that overrides the Constitution, then what the hell is the point of the amendment process, which is Article 9 of this Constitution? Clearly, if you want to change the Constitution, you have to amend the Constitution. You can't just write a law. And so the House determines its presiding officer. It's a very important constitutional question here. Now, what I was referring to as they shall show up is in state statute 305. Now, there's nothing in the Minnesota statute that's contrary to that. So they're breaking the law, not showing up here. Does that make sense?
Well, okay, so I'm just trying to think of who's interpreting that as them breaking the law.
Well, the term shall in legal parlance is basically a requirement.
Well, but is that something that a court would have to look over and be like, yes?
No,
it's
because
certified?
once again, you shouldn't have a court looking at it. And by the way, they're breaking the law, but it doesn't mean they go to jail. I don't know if there's even a penalty. I don't think there's any. It just says they shall. They're breaking the law, so it's like they're breaking the law. That's the thing. So if you want to enforce laws, if you want to write laws for the state, you should follow laws. But is there any penalty? Probably not, right? They're not. It's not like there's jail time or fine.
actually, yeah.
They're just breaking the law, which... What's the point of law if you don't have a penalty for it? But some laws, especially ones like this, don't have penalties attached to it. Now, I would argue, once again, that if they're not here when they were instructed to do it, they're not members. I think that's a reasonable interpretation.
Well, okay, so that argument, that right there, who would decide that's how it's going to be?
It's the House.
The House. And so what's going to happen is Simon's going to try to hold on to power here, which he does not have. And so Republicans are just going to take over the Minnesota House because they're the ones that showed up, and they're the only members in the House right now. Actually, in a bit, because we have to, once again, have them swear in. And by the way, the Democrats
Here,
need.
they're wrapping up here 65B, and then they're going to go to 66 and
All right, then they're going to
67.
introduce the Chief Justice.
District 66A, Leah Finke.
Leah Finke.
District
Leah's,
66B,
there's a new name for Lee
Athena
Finke.
Hollins.
Chris Finke, Lee Finke, Leah Finke.
And it looks like Bobby Joe Jamie is
District
allowed to preside over the
67A,
Senate today.
Liz
They're going to
Lee.
switch off for the next couple of weeks. What
Of
a
course.
joke.
Of course, they'd give him the
District
gavel.
67B,
Hopefully Republicans
Jay
got something out of
Shaw.
Miller.
There being 133 certificates of election on file, I
Ooh.
now call upon the Honorable Jennifer L. Frisch, Chief Judge of the Minnesota Court of Appeals, to come forward to administer the
I
oath
thought
of
it was
office
Hudson as well,
to
so
the
that's
members
not the
elect.
case. So we have a
The members
different
elect,
judge.
Please rise while Chief
Now,
Judge
why is that
Frisch
changed?
administers the oath of office.
Did we get fake news, Jesse?
No, Simon put that out there that it was going to be her.
Oh, he gave us fake news.
To the members-elect.
Okay, so
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that you will support the Constitution of the United States?
okay, this is where it's going
and
to get
the
interesting, guys.
Constitution of the State of Minnesota, and that you will faithfully discharge the duties of the office to which you have just been elected to the best of your ability, so help you God.
Okay, there are 67 members of the Minnesota House. Not 134, not even 133, 67 members, and they're all
Simon
Republican.
Said 133
Where?
election certificates on file. 67 is a quorum of 133.
By the way, Jesse, we are a really red state. We have a 67 out of 67 in the House as Republicans.
Yeah.
What a red state Minnesota is.
Congratulations, members, one and all.
Okay, here we go. Here's where it gets interesting. Ooh, what's going to happen?
The clerk pro tem will now take the roll to determine a quorum.
So the Republican is going to determine a quorum. He's going to probably override her determination. They're going to want to
Members will vote
go.
at their desk.
They're going to click on the clickers there, and I'll go up on the
okay.
board.
Better than having to read through the roll again.
Maybe they'll read through the roll. They could do either one.
Clerk will take the roll.
They could do a standing.
Yeah.
Okay. She's going to determine that there's 67 of 133 election certificates, as the Secretary of State just said.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, there is a quorum. And the Secretary of State from the executive branch is going to say there is not a quorum. And he's going to try to adjourn. Republicans will challenge it. And this is where it's going to get interesting, folks. We're in unprecedented territory. It's never happened before. Man, these first days are so utterly boring.
Mm-hmm.
This is not boring. Frozen Man North says, Brad Tapke fired himself today. That's true.
Mm-hmm.
That's very true. If you think your election should stand, Brad Tapke, show up to work. You didn't show up
Clerk
to
will
work.
close the roll.
Here we go. This is where it gets really interesting, guys.
There being 67 members present, there is no quorum as
Okay.
required by the Constitution of the State of Minnesota.
Mr.
The House
Secretary.
may
There
not
you go.
conduct
This is
any
Harry
further
Niska.
business, and the House of
This
Representatives.
is Harry
Mr.
Niska.
Secretary.
Secretary, I
Scott just
move
walked
to
off.
appeal the ruling of no quorum.
Okay, no, don't put the music on. Okay, so see, now Republicans are holding their own. Oh, freaking idiots in the. Give us the audio. See, media services are playing the game of the Democrats
Right.
by going to the. This is what we were afraid. So as you see now, the Republicans are. I'm going to have our person on the floor zoom in here so we can get some audio. Say they cut audio off. Can you zoom in?
I hope their audio is good.
Okay, we're going to have Sarah
and
zoom
it doesn't
in.
look like Simon is at the seat any longer. Paul
So-
Anderson is the oldest member of the House that is present.
Yes.
He has the authority to gavel people in the absence of the Secretary of State. It looks like there is an absence of the Secretary of State.
Right.
I think Paul Anderson should go up there right now and
Yep.
let's get a speaker elected.
And what Jesse's referring to is that the Minnesota House, by statute 303, says in the absence of the Secretary of State, the oldest member. Okay, now you heard the challenge by Harry Niska, who's kind of yep. You're pointing on him right there as center.
Oh, look at me go.
Are they going to give us audio? Or are they just going to cut the music? This is really fascinating. I wish we had the audio, guys. I'm going to try. Okay, so there you go. You got Paul Anderson. Go to the roster. Here we go. Good. Never mind.
Wow. All right.
This is beautiful. Okay, here we go. Republicans with a backbone. I love it. All right, so you got Paul Anderson. Okay, just cut off. She said she was in Zoom, but cut off because I don't want to bother her.
Miska moves to rule the previous chair's adjournment out of order.
This is the oldest member,
Favor
Paul
say
Anderson.
aye.
What is he, 73?
All opposed say
73.
nay.
This is great.
Motion
Unanimous
prevails.
vote.
Okay, now let's elect a Speaker of the House. So that would be the next thing, is to elect a Speaker of the House. Now, since Steve Simon,
Hold on a second. It sounds like the mics are off.
Mr. Chair, I renew my appeal of the point of order on quorum, request a roll call, and offer advice.
Seeing those hands, Niska moves that the clerk pro tem take the roll for purposes of establishing a quorum. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay.
Democrats don't like what's
The
going
motion
on. You should have
prevails.
showed up.
The clerk
Yep.
will take the roll.
Okay, so they're going to establish a quorum with 67 members. Now, I would argue that the quorum is 34 right now, to be honest with you. I really do. Maybe they should do that. Say a quorum is 34. That's
Yeah.
his president. But either way, they're covered.
Right.
Well, I feel like such a nerd.
I'm really surprised that Steve Simon would just walk off like that.
Yeah, well, because maybe he saw what we wrote and said that he should be arrested if he refuses to leave the chamber. Because once the House determines that they have a sergeant in arms, actually, I think there's already a sergeant in arms. They just have to elect the chief sergeant in arms. If some member of the executive branch is going to try to usurp the powers of the legislative branch, arrest that individual. Remove that individual from the House chambers. He has no right to do that. And at this point, Steve Simon is not the presiding officer of the Minnesota
67
House.
votes of 133 members of the whole House. I declare the quorum is present.
By the way, a presiding officer can't just say you're adjourned. That is a debatable motion.
Right.
It's a motion, first of all, and it's debatable.
Right.
I shouldn't say it's debatable, but it needs support.
It can be appealed.
It needs a majority support.
It can be appealed.
Yes.
We will
And it
now
can be.
proceed to election of the Speaker. Nominations are in order. I call on the representative from Candy, Ohio, Representative Baker.
So at this point, we believe Lisa
Thank
DeMuth
you,
will be the
Mr.
Speaker of the House.
Speaker, officer, and
By
members.
the way, the identity politic Democrats
Today we
should be happy.
undertake
A
one of the most
woman
important
who's a
roles
minority is the first
of our
minority elected
responsibilities
Speaker of the House.
entrusted to us
Shouldn't they be cheering for that?
electing and selecting the Speaker of the House. Members, in this moment of deep division and polarization, the stakes have never been higher. The leader we choose must possess extraordinary qualities to navigate the challenges.
No, I don't think he's going to say anything
ahead of
so
us today.
monumental here. And I think she'll probably have
Force us to reflect on what defines
all the
a good
votes.
leader.
I don't know. Even if she doesn't, I mean, I'd argue she needs
Qualities
34
we
at this
must
point.
expect
The
and insist
big
on.
question here is, do they continue on with the chief clerk, which I think they should, Patrick
Qualities like
Murphy, as soon as
civility
the one that they're going to vote in.
fosters
The
respect
the chief sergeant at arms, they should elect that person. Who am I forgetting? Do they have
builds
another
bridges
job?
and ensures
Is there a chief
integrity.
parliamentarian? I think there is.
Wisdom
So they should elect those
forgetting
officer
this
positions.
body through complexity
And then the big question is, do they move on House District 54A and challenge the election of 54A, where Brad Tabke is the announced winner by a 14-point margin, although we have evidence, not evidence, we have admission by Scott County that they literally threw 20 ballots in the trash. And then the Democrats wanted to try to introduce on the record in a court who those voters were, which gets rid of the secret ballot.
proudly
And by the way, they didn't even have 100% confidence those were the voters.
as Speaker of
And so just a common sense thing is, listen, I'm not saying Brad Tabke didn't win.
history.
I'm not saying Tabke did win. All I'm saying is the election spoiled because of the election worker in Shakopee.
Commitment
And so you need to have another election.
situation
And by the way, if Brad Tabke disagrees, he could show up today. But he's not there, is he? Brad Tapke's not there. And we just watched an unprecedented move by an executive branch member trying to adjourn the legislature. It's unbelievable, but good for Republicans. Stand up. Let's go to some comments. Have we had a Rumble rant today? I guess we haven't even had a Rumble rant. So let's just go to regular comments here.
Let's see here. Billy22 says, cue the Democrat shrieks of kangaroo court. Bill Dangsman says someone should arrest Steve Simon right now. Frozen Man North says, did Simon declare a coup? Andy Parrish says, obstruction of an official proceeding. Lots of January 6ers went to jail for that.
Yep.
Dreamkick Ass T says, Niska has a chance to be Emmer's challenger. Do good, Harry. It has been impressive to see how he's been fighting so far. Whiskey Tango Foxtrot says, who's the presiding officer? And that is Paul Anderson, who is the oldest member of the Republicans. And they're nominating
the presiding officer. By the way, this is an interesting point. The Constitution doesn't even mention the term speaker in it. We've watched a lot of media with fake news.
It is my honor and privilege today to stand before you to second the nomination
Spencer
of Representative Lisa Damoth, whose leadership, experience, and unwavering dedication to our state make her the perfect candidate to serve as the next Speaker of the Minnesota House of Representatives. I would like to share a quote from history with this body and the people of Minnesota. A leader is someone who shows others how to live with virtue, not by commanding, but by example. That is the type of leader Representative Damoth is. She is a leader with experience, integrity, vision, and the ability to bring people together. Representative Damoth possesses all of these qualities, and she excels at bringing balance to the work we do here in the Minnesota House. She has a clear vision for a better Minnesota, a Minnesota that we make more affordable, safe, and build for our future. Yet, at the same time, she knows how to build consensus, ensuring that all voices are heard and respected. In today's
well, Spencer Igo isn't that interesting, and we got a $50 Rumble rant from Love Minnesota. Ron Krisha is a cuck, and I couldn't agree with you any more than that. So we appreciate that $50 Rumble rant. And
where's the Rumble rant? I don't even see that on the
I don't know why it's not popping up on here yet, but it will be eventually. But yeah, I see it on my screen, so we appreciate that, Love Minnesota.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
And I think obviously, you know, the reason they got Igo speaking right now is because they want to have someone from up north, you know, to show that she's got support from all around the state.
Looks like
but
Jessica
Spencer Igo is just kind of another squishy rhino with no spine. So
it looks like Jessica Johnson is a
yeah. Let's go ahead and get back to
Anderson, by the way.
Not divide. Who can lead with purpose?
Too bad she didn't win.
Partisanship,
yeah.
And who
still have
can
Josiah
keep the
Hill.
needs of everyday Minnesotans front and center. There's no better choice.
By the way, I think it's like
it might be her because she's sitting with Patty Anderson. It could just be a guest.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
thinking,
okay.
Jessica is a guest
I
of
see.
Patty Anderson.
Can thrive her leadership will bring us closer to that vision, and I have no doubt that with her
it's
at the helm,
interesting to note that about 60-some% of the Republican House are new members in the last 2-3 years. Since 2022, there's been a lot of new members. Like you're looking at Spencer Igo, who's been there for a while. Peggy Bennett, that's been there for a long time. That's the lady behind him. These are kind of rhinos, you know. But you got a lot of new members that are pretty fresh. It's changed the dynamics of Minnesota House, which, by the way, we never would have saw a spine on these guys 2, 4, 6 years ago. Now they're actually standing up.
Right.
It's good.
Well, they want power. That's the aligning interest here.
Yeah. But this is like the Minnesota Republicans. They're the ones that could be on the goal line and fumble, right?
Yep. Well, look at what the Senate Republicans just did.
Yeah. If you're just tuning in, that's Minnesota Republicans, who are the only members of the Minnesota House right now. It stands.
It's going to be nuts if someone else is nominated.
Electing their presiding officer, which is Speaker. The acting presiding officer, according to Statute 303, is Paul Anderson, the oldest member. So they're going to
nominations closed. The nominated candidate for Speaker of the House, Representative Lisa Damoth. Clerk Pro Tem will now call the roll on the election of the Speaker.
Obviously speakers are a voice vote, so this will take a while.
Representative Acom.
And obviously, well, okay.
And she's reading the Democrats.
Why would you read the Democrats? They're not there.
Right.
I don't know. I guess we disagree with the Republicans here. I don't even think you read the Democrats here.
Right. I mean, they didn't answer the roll.
Yeah, they didn't answer the roll.
They're not there.
Yeah. But no, I don't even think they're a member. They didn't go to the Minnesota House today, which is the the decider. Let's read this here. Let's get this.
But let's assume like one person was absent. I'm sure they would still read them in that situation. So I guess I can kind of understand why she would do so. But the reading of tab key doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me because, like we've talked about, there is an ongoing election contest there.
Well, I argue right now there's only 67 members of the Minnesota House. So this is what Minnesota...
When you're saying that, is that because you don't think that the swearing in that they did before counted?
Yes, because actually Minnesota statute lays this out, okay? Can you hold that thought? Let me read the Constitution, then I'll get back to that, okay? So what it does here, let me think here. I've been all over this. It's all Minnesota. It's Article 4. It's not Section 4. It is... Okay. It's Section 6. And it says in Section 6, Article 4, Section 6 of the Minnesota Constitution says, each house shall be the judge of the election returns and eligibility of its own members. Okay, now this is real important. I read this earlier. A judge determined this morning that Brad Tabke should be placed as legislator. Brad Tabke argued as recent as yesterday with that court that they don't make the determination the Minnesota House does. And if I could quote, he says, the court's purely advisement, okay? So they don't even have determination. The determination is Minnesota House, and I just read it there in Article 4, Section 6 of the Minnesota Constitution. Each house shall be the judge of the election returns and eligibility of its own members. So now getting back to what you were saying, Dawson, then we get into what is the start of the Minnesota legislative session, and that's where it says in State Statute 303, what they do on the noon of the day appointed for convening the legislature, the members shall meet in their respective chambers. So the Democrats aren't actually following the law. They did not meet in their respective chambers. They're not at the Capitol as far as we understand. Okay, and then if I read
the election
further,
certificate
it says,
shall be left on the desk of each member.
Yes. Okay, so fair point. So once again, the Secretary of State calls the House to order. In the absence of the Secretary of State, the oldest member present shall act in the officer's place. That's why we have Paul Anderson presiding over the speaker nominations. And then once the speaker is elected, then he removes himself from the rostrum, and Lisa Demuth is the presiding officer. And the Constitution doesn't say the term speaker. That comes after the fact. And then it goes, as each is called, so they're talking about the clerk pro temp shall call the legislative districts in the order of their numbers. As each is called, the persons claiming to be members from each shall present their certificates to be filed. All whose certificates are so presented shall then stand and be sworn. So what I would argue, Dawson, is because those members didn't show up with their certificates and did not swear in, they are not members. It says all whose certificates are so presented. Remember, it starts noon the first day of legislation. Noon the first day of the legislature. All whose certificates are so presented shall then stand and be sworn. So if you think about it, that's a timeline, right? Noon, some point after noon, after presenting their certificate, they then swear in. So how can you swear in before the legislature? That's the point. Now, I could argue they don't have to swear in on the House floor, but they have to swear in following presenting their certificates on the House floor. And so why are they getting paid? Do you guys know this? You're paying your taxes, and the Democrats are taking their salary, despite, in my opinion, not being members of the Minnesota House.
And if we want to hear what the Democrats are saying, Representative Zach Stevenson says the House is adjourned. Everything that happened after Secretary Simon adjourned the House is just political theater. Jamie Long is saying Kangaroo Court is officially called to order. So the Democrats are going to try to play this up that none of what is going on is legitimate. They're going to try to decertify any of the business that is transacted so far. And it just goes to show that the next 2 weeks are just going to be a battle between the House Republicans and House Democrats. The House Republicans need to take immediate action on 54A to ensure that the voters of that district are heard. Brad Tabke cannot be seated with what's going on.
What would be different about this if the Democrats did show up?
Well, there would be a question of quorum, right? I mean, that because you could see their side of the argument. The House has 134 seats or 134 legislative districts, and so a majority of 134 is 68. So this is not very well spelled out in law, okay? So there are two arguments. There are two sides of that coin. I tend to think that the Republicans are on the right side of this. Plus, once again, they're holding up a quorum against the law because it says they shall actually meet. So essentially what the Democrats are trying to do is remove a legitimate branch of government. Like literally, that's what let's just be honest what the Democrats are doing. They're obstructing a government proceeding. The same thing the J6ers went to jail for.
Well, it seems it seems like not a great idea that the legislature themselves get to like decide the rules for all this stuff, because then it's going to be totally partisan. It's going to be, oh, well, the Democrats are wrong, and the Democrats will be, oh, the Republicans are wrong.
No, it's never really been abused because it's about the election returns, and there's very few times where you would be questioning this kind of stuff, and these are unique circumstances which are bringing up the Tabke situation. If you look at Minnesota history, there's only 2 times where a state representative has been removed by the body, so it's unique circumstances that bring this about.
Well, I actually think Dawson's making a fair point in the sense that what the Democrats are risking doing here is starting this chaos down the road. And this is where, we sound alarm, and a lot of people did. When the Democrats used lawfare against Donald Trump, they're opening up a can of worms. And then to the point where they argue, Donald Trump's going to come after his political enemies. I'm like you guys did? Like, I kind of don't want Donald Trump to some degree doing it, because I think we got to cut that off. That's really bad for the future of the country. But do you blame Donald Trump for doing it? Do you? Because they did that. 4 indictments, 90-some charges, tried throwing this guy in prison, robbed him of his money. That's a different case, civil case, actually many civil cases. They used lawfare against Donald Trump. They picked jurisdictions that were favorable to the left's arguments, and they prosecute him there. That's terrible. Where are we at here in the roll call?
They said Niska not too long ago.
So we're kind of in the middle, or kind of toward, well, I guess a little past the middle then.
Purcell.
Okay, we're getting closer. So yeah, what we expect then is she'll have 67 votes, which is a majority. The House has 133 members, and if the Democrats don't like the fact that there's 133 members, then do a better job and make sure your members or your candidates don't cheat.
We want to be listening for Tabke here, so we're on ours, so.
Yeah, that is a good point.
Roach votes Damuth. Robbins. Robbins votes Damuth.
I guess we still got a little bit before.
Well, we're getting
still
close.
quite a few people. There's a lot of S's. I'm looking at the alphabetical list. I'm seeing quite a few S's in here. So
I suppose there are a lot of S's
there.
But
again, as I've said before, I don't want to keep repeating myself, but she should not be reading Tabke to have a vote in the speaker election with an ongoing investigation. They need to assign a committee to look at this so that they can create a standing report, adopt the standing report, and then Tabke is removed by a majority vote.
And if he doesn't like that, he can show up to work.
Yeah.
It's kind of a... Oh, by the way, taking the oath of office was, in secrecy, was Brad Tabke,
Yep.
Steer.
Right, the Republicans have to make their moves out in the open right now. The Democrats are trying to make their moves in secret, behind closed doors, behind the scenes, but...
She did call for Tabke.
Wow.
Torkelson.
Okay, so we are getting close to the end here. And so Damuth will then come to the rostrum, and she'll give a speech. The question we don't know is, do they continue on with officer positions? It would be a role for the chief clerk, a role for the chief sergeant at arms.
So
my memory is not serving me correct. Is there a parliamentarian too? Chief clerk and chief sergeant at arms are definitely positions.
If the Democrats right now are saying, "Oh, none of this counts. Don't worry about it," what are they just not going to come?
I mean, they're going to try to go into courts, but it's really problematic for the courts to try to decide what's going on inside the legislature. doesn't. There's not a lot of precedence over that.
It feels
In
like
fact,
that just makes sense.
here's where it hurts us. So the Minnesota legislature will pass omnibus bills, which, you know, if you read Article 4, Section 17 of the Minnesota Constitution, in fact, I'll just read it for you because
they're just about to wrap up here.
Yeah, but there's really nothing. She's going to get announced. I don't think this is something we need to cut to.
We'll have to see what she's going to do here.
Well, when she gets up there, she's going to shake hands, kiss babies, you know. So Article 4, Section 17 says laws embrace only one subject. No law shall embrace more than one subject, which shall be expressed in its title. That's obviously abused all the time. People have filed in court against that, and courts will generally allow the legislature to violate the Constitution because they don't want
They just read the last person.
Okay, they don't want to override what the legislature does because there are separations of powers.
They're separations of powers. I thought that they were
Berg.
Well, the
Watching
actual
between
original
each other.
construction of this,
Bierman.
Oh, she has to read through the absent members again.
Sure.
Oh, man.
the original construction of this constitutional republic, the United States, is that the courts weren't supposed to interpret the constitutionality of the legislature or the Congress. That is something that actually got determined during Marbury versus Madison. It was a very early decision of the Supreme Court. Supreme Court was really to the biggest function was to resolve interstate disputes. Really, our country is founded on a compact of different states, all these little constitutional republics, you know, original 13, and there's going to be disputes between Delaware and Virginia, and so the Supreme Court is the arbiter of those disputes, right? It wasn't to say, hey, what Congress is doing is unconstitutional.
Well,
because why do judges get to determine constitutionality? Why don't the legislators get to determine constitutionality?
But
At the
then
end of
that
the day,
was
that's the one
changed.
problem with the Constitution is it has to be upheld by the people entrusted with passing laws. And when they don't do it, the remedy technically is at election time. But we have recall elections as well, so that there's another remedy. Go ahead. Sorry, what were you going to say?
It's just confusing.
It's confusing. I get you.
Because, like, to me, it makes sense that you would go to a court to have them interpret the Minnesota Constitution in this case.
Well, you have to understand that our country and our state have a very important principle of divided powers. So why we are different than a monarchy is we don't have one supreme ruler, right?
Right.
We have divided powers.
Well, and
Okay.
you know,
the
election returns being judged by Congress is something that comes from the federal government. It comes from the U.S. Constitution. The U.S. Congress has the judgment over their own election returns, so that's why most state legislatures have the same ruling.
And it's really it really is problematic. And I'm not saying there's no way, if you have to have government, there's no perfect solution, right? But the one thing, and it's very clear, and especially in the Minnesota Constitution, it's Article 3. It says, division of powers. The powers of government shall be divided into 3 distinct departments, legislative, executive, and judicial. No person or persons belonging to or constituting one of these departments shall exercise any of the powers properly belonging to either of the other, except in the instances expressly provided in this Constitution. So, for instance, the power of creating laws is of the legislature only. However, in the Constitution, it does say that the governor either signs it or vetoes it.
Which is
okay,
executive.
so that's an example of where he has some limited powers. Nowhere in the Constitution does it say the Secretary of State's the presiding officer. So that's a very problematic thing for him to say, no, I just rule the Minnesota House. He knows this. He's a lawyer. He knows what he's doing is wrong. But, of course, it's all about power with politicians. They don't give a shit about the Constitution. By the way, what's their oath of office to? The Constitution. They don't give a shit about that document at all.
Would it be bad if it went to the courts because the courts would favor the side of the Democrats?
Well, that's part of the problem. I mean, just going to courts in general is a problem. But in Minnesota, they just happen to be all Democrats because I think it would go right up to the Supreme Court, Jesse. So the Supreme Court is all Governor Walz and Governor Mark Dayton appointees. It's 100% Democrat appointees. So what do you think's going to... That's the Supreme Court where Justice Paul Teason is on the right side of the bench. And Paul Teason was the Democrat Speaker of the House, less than a decade ago? And he's the voice of reason. It's like Minneapolis mayor. It's like when Jacob Fry is your voice of reason for mayor of Minneapolis. It just shows you how far gone Minneapolis is.
I had in college I had a lot of liberal friends who were deep into politics and stuff, and nobody likes Jacob Fry.
Right.
Like
except for the business community that are like, well, Republicans can't get elected here, so he's somewhat reasonable. He didn't say we should defund the police. He's going against a bunch of people that say no police at all. So he's like pro-cop to some degree.
It's really funny.
But that's the Minnesota Supreme Court. It's just Democrats. Are we done with the call? So here we go. We have audio?
Yeah.
Okay. I hope all you guys at home are enjoying this here. Well, we don't know. I mean, we're at the
results of the roll call on the election of the Speaker are as follows. Representative Demuth, 67 votes. And I therefore declare Representative Lisa Demuth duly elected Speaker of the House of Representatives for the state of Minnesota for the 25-26 session.
She has a very nice smile, doesn't she? There you go. Jeff Backer, Jim Nash. Now she'll go up and get the gavel. She'll take the place at the rostrum. And per the Minnesota Constitution, they have elected their presiding officer. If Democrats don't like that, they should have shown up. They did not show up today. Once again, Jesse, I think she only needed 34 votes.
Now I appoint the following members of the House to escort Speaker-elect to the rostrum: Jim Nash, Krista Knudsen, and Jeff Backer.
I would love to know the ceremony here. Why she needs to be escorted. Is there, like, what is that for? I don't know. We should have a historian here to go through that kind of stuff. Okay, now I think what they're going to do, she'll give a speech, and the speech might be interesting, so we'll let her speak here. But if she doesn't have some spice to it, we might just move on. But what will be really interesting here is if they move on with
now, as a member of the House
electing other officers.
Republic,
We don't know.
Representative Paul Anderson will administer the oath of office to the Speaker-elect.
Usually they have a justice do this, but it doesn't need to be that way. He could certainly do
Do you
it.
solemnly swear or affirm that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota, and that you will faithfully discharge the duties of the office to which you have been just elected to the best of your abilities? Do you so help you God?
I will.
Oh no, look how many pages her speech is. Oh no.
Oh my goodness.
No. Oh.
Members, I want to thank you for this incredible honor. I am deeply humbled by the trust that you have placed in me to serve as Speaker of the House in the state of Minnesota. Today I stand before you not only as a representative, but as a Minnesotan committed to working for the people who sent us here to do the work. Those of you that are elected officials here in this room know that we could not do this without the support of family and friends and those that encourage us. I'd like to thank my family for being here today. My husband, Nick, my mom,
Dawson,
3 of my kids,
Dawson,
4 of my
on the thread. Don't go to Jesse.
Oh, thank you. You know that the work is challenging to every elected official. The hours are long, the days are long, it is challenging, and then there are those times that it is encouraging and we get to do the work for the people of Minnesota. In addition to those that support us back home, we know that we could not do what we do without staff. And I am grateful for the staff that has chosen to go ahead and partner with us in this work, both partisan and nonpartisan. We could not do this without you, so thank you. To those members of the House of Representatives for this legislative session.
Talking to some of the aides there, so I don't know if they got something cooking.
Thank you for your service and your dedication to your constituents.
Essentially, what's going to happen?
While we may not always
they could go ahead and elect the other officer positions. I think they should, by the way, Jesse, because that way Democrats would have to argue that Patrick Murphy wasn't really the chief clerk, and that whoever the sergeant arms, I don't know who that is these days, is not. So that's what I would think would be the smart move to do. And then it's really a question of, do they tackle the 54A matter? Do they challenge the election of House District 54A, where 14 votes was the margin of alleged victory by Brad Tapke, but 20 votes were tossed in the trash. 20 ballots were tossed in the trash. Seems to be a pretty big deal. By the way, you know when 20 ballots won't go in the trash? If we had voting only on election day.
They expect us to listen and to collaborate.
By the way, I don't like, how do you even do that? It's just so ridiculous that someone would accidentally throw 20 ballots in the trash. It's such a ridiculous thing.
We believe in strength and ingenuity.
You can go turn up the volume there, Dawson.
Our job is to create that environment that allows individuals and families and businesses to thrive. That means keeping our government accountable and ensuring that every taxpayer dollar is spent wisely and empowering our communities to address their very unique challenges. But leadership also requires partnership. Whether it is investing into our infrastructure, addressing the workforce shortage, supporting our farmers, or protecting our most vulnerable citizens, these are the areas that we can and we must find common ground. I want to assure every member in this chamber, every member serving in the House of Representatives, that my door will always be open. I will welcome your ideas, I will welcome your concerns and your input. Together, we can build strong solutions that are balanced. Those solutions can be practical and fair, and they will be solutions that truly work for Minnesotans. In this role, I will work tirelessly to foster that culture of respect and civility here in this House chamber.
Let's go ahead and read that Rumble rant there.
We owe it to the
Jesse.
people
Yeah, we got
that we
a $5
represent.
Rumble rant from Phil Kent. Says ballots in the trash, not an accident. So
Yeah, I can't imagine that's an accident. We got
gotta
some,
wonder.
We got some comments here. The Minnesota House DFL caucus, which, by the way, does not have any members of the legislature right now. says, what Republicans are doing on the House floor right now is an unlawful sham with no legal authority. Oh, of course. When a black woman rises to power, you guys are saying it's not authorized. Of course. Just trying to bring the black woman down, aren't we, Democrats? Anyhow, they say it's sham with no legal authority. Secretary of State Steve Simon adjourned session. Really? After finding there was not a 68-member quorum required to conduct House business. Everything that has happened after adjournment is a sham. No one believes you guys. You're dumb. Jamie Long wrote earlier, before the session even started. Oh, no. Was this before? Okay, no, he wrote this after. Make no mistake, the House was adjourned. By the way, Jamie Long is a male, I believe, right? He's a guy. I know he protrudes a lot of estrogen, not a lot of testosterone, but I think it is a dude. Make no mistake, the House was adjourned by Secretary of State Steve Simon with no quorum. The actions of the House GOP were legal, and Lisa Demuth is not Speaker. And then he's got a GIF of a kangaroo because they're saying it's a kangaroo court.
Was Steve Simon supposed to talk about whatever motion they made?
He's in uncharted territory. He's taking power that doesn't exist to him. Okay, I think they'll nominate a chief clerk. That's Patrick Murphy to the left.
And the clerk will report the resolution.
All right, we're reading resolutions then. Oh, the House does actually have to follow order of business. So that's what they're doing right now. Yeah, Tucker says, boring ass generic speech. I didn't think it was going to be great, so I didn't bother to...
Resolved that the findings of fact and conclusions of law received by the House from the Honorable Judge Leonardo Castro, 2nd Judicial District,
DiCaprio?
County of Ramsey, in the matter of Paul Wickstrom, contestant, versus Curtis Johnson, contestee, be accepted without further review, and that a vacancy resulting from a successful election contest be declared for
this is
40B.
I never thought of this, and this is a good thing that they're doing right now.
Yep.
They're establishing right now on the Minnesota House floor that the vacancy occurs today.
I recognize Representative Niska.
And so Governor Walz was incorrect in
the illegal writ of election. Right.
The following resolution, and members, there are copies of the resolution on each of your desks.
Walz is breaking the law because they... Go ahead.
Today, the House has only 133 members.
I think they have
because of a
67.
Successful election challenge in District 40B that was decided by the district court, and the candidate whose eligibility was contested has chosen not to appeal that. The governor has not followed the law in terms of setting out a writ of special election.
Against the law.
But the House Republicans want the people of 40B to have a lawful election.
Okay, and they're doing this because this will now be submitted to the court case.
In order to allow them to be lawfully represented.
Actually, I take that back.
In the House of Representatives.
This is a role that they have in the Minnesota House. I forgot about that.
Begins the clock on when the governor can lawfully.
There you go.
Under our statutes.
It's a good move by the Republicans here.
A vacancy resulting from an election contest.
Let me go pull up this chapter real quick.
Election, and I urge its passage.
Okay, so let's get you a little more context. Minnesota House, Minnesota statute.
Is there any discussion to the resolution?
What is it? 340? We've done this a million times.
We'll take the roll. This is a voice vote, members.
204D.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
It says in subdivision 4, the House
the resolution passes.
can pass a resolution. So there you go. Special election in House District 40B should not go forward for January 27th.
And people can learn more about that on actionforliberty.com. Read the article titled, Walz's illegal writ of election might screw over Democrats, plus Senate race has residency issue too.
Right. Okay, so that's really good that they did that. So Walz just got a blow given to him. Now Democrats argued, no, this is all sham, but it's not a sham. The Constitution says they choose their presiding officer. You guys chose not to come today. Against the law. I wonder what the clerk is like right now, Patrick Murphy. On the bottom left, that's the presumed chief clerk. He's not been officially
Representative Niska offers
elected.
The following resolution relating to the temporary rules. The clerk pro tem will report the resolution.
We haven't done
Niska
yet.
offers the following resolution and moves its adoption. Be it resolved that the temporary rules of the House for this session, the 94th regular session, shall be the same as the permanent rules of the House for the last session, the 93rd
Okay, so
regular
they're just
session as the
operating under the same rules as the last session, which I guess would be mostly non-controversial for the most part, I guess.
rules shall apply until the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration, to be appointed by the Speaker, shall have made its report and the new permanent rules have been adopted.
There are copies of the resolution being distributed. I recognize the member from Anoka, Representative Niska, to explain the resolution.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. The temporary rules are the same as the permanent rules that were adopted by the Democrat majority 2 years ago, with two exceptions.
Okay,
One
here we
is
go.
that we are changing the committee structure to be the committee structure that the Republicans have partially negotiated with Democrats prior to their decision to walk away from
Democrats don't like
serving
this.
in the
They should
Minnesota
show
House
up
of
and vote on the
Representatives.
rules.
But with one important exception. Republicans are committed to rooting out fraud and waste and misappropriation in state government. And so it is important that the House have a committee on fraud prevention and state government oversight. And that is in addition to the temporary rules. In addition, we as the House have a solemn duty to judge the election returns and eligibility of our members. And so this, and the Minnesota Constitution requires us to adopt procedures on how to do that, and the temporary rules contain within it a procedure to deal with the one remaining pending election contest regarding a member of the House of Representatives. Those are the temporary rules, and I urge that we adopt them.
Is there any discussion to the resolution? If not, the clerk pro tem will take the roll.
So what we don't know yet, if they're going to actually hold elections for the other officer positions, and if they will address House District 54A. They could adjourn till tomorrow, 3:30 tomorrow. So that is a possibility. Don't you love seeing Drew Roach up there? What a beautiful voting line that is. And Tom DePel too up there. He's kind of cut off on the screen, right under Damuth. And your buddy Walter Hudson.
Yeah, your buddy.
Oh man. I mean, this is it. There's really no stopping the Republicans if the Democrats are going to show up. Not that they're doing anything really controversial right now. I mean, the Democrats' argument right now is, well, there should not be a Minnesota House. That's their argument. They're trying to hold up a quorum. I argue, and of course they're arguing that no, they have a quorum and they're conducting business.
Who was the guy who came up after the guy said we're adjourned?
So that's Paul Anderson, and that's according to Minnesota Statute 303, that the oldest member of the chamber is the person to preside until a speaker is elected.
So,
because he's the oldest one. I think, was he 73? Is that it?
Was he allowed to go up after it was adjourned?
He just did it.
Oh, so he...
Okay, hold on one second, Dawson. Let's see what this is.
NISC offers the following resolution and moves its adoption. Resolved that necessary employees as directed by the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration be authorized by the House effective today, Tuesday, January 14th, 2025, to better expedite the business of the House.
I recognize the member from Anoka, the Majority Leader Niska.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. The resolution is pretty self-explanatory. We need to continue to operate with employees here at the House, including our amazing nonpartisan staff that's been helping us through this difficult time. And so I urge members to support the resolution.
Is there any discussion to the resolution? Since the resolution is an expenditure of money pursuant to our rules, there will be a roll call. The clerk pro tem will take the roll.
Just so you know, I think we're all in the dark here because the motions and resolutions under the Minnesota House website is May 20th of 2024, so they haven't updated it. Certainly in the chaos, this hasn't been something on people's radar. So we're not able to see. I'm not finding it, Jesse. You're a good researcher, but I'm not seeing anything that would show us what the resolutions are that are being offered. Eventually they will, but this is the first day, so. And these don't seem very controversial, by the way.
0 nays, the resolution is adopted. Announcement by the Speaker.
Okay, so it sounds like they're going to
The
close
clerk
up business for
will
the day.
read the announcement of appointment of speakers pro tem.
So usually
The Speaker announces
announcements
the
are at the
appointment
end
of
of the legislative
Representative
day.
Olson as Speaker pro tempore and Representative Schultz as Deputy Speaker pro tempore for the 2025-26 session.
Announcement by the Speaker.
Announcement by the Speaker. The Speaker announces the appointment of the following members to the House to the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration. Niska, Chair. Engen, Vice Chair. Jacob, Nash, Schultz, Scott, Steer, Torkelson, and Zaliznikar.
What a name.
Representative Swedzinski offers the following resolution. The clerk pro tem will read the resolution.
Okay.
Swedzinski offers the following resolution and moves its adoption. Resolved that the selection of permanent desks shall be as directed by the Speaker as follows. That the Republican caucus shall occupy Section 1, seats 1 to 19, Section 2, seats 22 to 41.
These are a lot of fun, aren't they?
And Section
Resolutions
3,
on where you're seated.
Seats 42 to 69. All members of the Republican caucus shall be seated in the manner prescribed by the Republican caucus. And 2, that the DFL caucus shall occupy Section 4, seats 70 to 97, Section 5, seats 99 to 119,
This
and
is
Section 6,
interesting
seats
stuff here,
120
Jesse.
to 138.
We must know
All
where everyone
members of the
sits.
DFL caucus shall seat
What
in
members of the
manner
DFL caucus? What?
prescribed by the
So the thing that they're gonna have to work around is after the guy left. He said after the guy left, he walked up and he said, "We're gonna keep going." That's
Well,
the twist.
Yeah,
It says
very
in the
good point. And
absence
this
of the
is
Speaker.
Yeah, this is fun doing this with you, Dawson, because you have no background in this kind of stuff, and quite frankly, no one has a background in this. This is all unprecedented. But the point is, there's no authority for him to act the way he acted. Okay, first of all, he's the presiding officer by a state statute, but that isn't in the Constitution. The Constitution says the House determines their presiding officer. So he's already acting against the Constitution, which is supreme law. Go ahead and read the rumble.
Brad Ganser gives a $5 rumble and says, very smart to do a spending resolution if followed. It gives validity to the seated legislature. So what he's saying is if you were to give something, if you were to pass a resolution that has a little bit of money behind it, meaning that there's appropriations and that there's something that you can actually track, something that actually needs to happen following the passage.
Yeah, the
that would be
legitimacy
a
of
good way to test that the legislature actually has effect once they pass something. So
Can't believe I'm saying
that's
this.
a good
but
point.
Can't believe I'm saying it, but it's a good point, Brad Ganser. What do we got here?
Members and guests, there will be a reception immediately following session, and the Rules Committee will meet in room G23, 30 minutes after adjournment.
I recognize the Majority Leader, Representative
So they're going to
Niska.
adjourn now, it sounds like.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that when the House adjourns today, it adjourns
Wednesday,
until
3:30.
noon, Wednesday,
Nope,
January 15th, 2025.
Representative Niska
Okay, so they're not going
moves
to
that when
tackle
the House
the
adjourns
tab key election, which I think they should have today.
Wednesday,
Yeah.
January 15th, 2025. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Nay. The motion prevails. Representative Niska.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the House do now adjourn.
Representative Niska moves that the House do now adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
That's a bad idea.
All those opposed
If they have
Okay, now do you see this?
The motion prevails.
It was
The
a
House
motion,
stands
so this-
adjourned until noon Wednesday,
this goes right to your point,
January 15th,
Dawson.
2025.
What's that?
Okay, so we are done with day one of legislative session. And, I'd say give yourself a pat on the back, Republicans, because I think you did a fairly good job, although I think you probably should have tackled Brad Tapke's 54A race.
Yeah, and I got something to say on that.
So what you just saw there, Dawson, is a motion from the House floor, a member that made a motion to adjourn. That's actually not a debatable motion, meaning it's straight up vote.
Right.
To win a vote, you have to have a majority. Yeah. I argue once again the majority in this case is 34 because we only have 67 members. It seems like the Republicans disagree with that. They think there's 133 members. Certainly, it's not 134 members. All right.
Yeah. So
Steve Simon says you're adjourned. Well, where do you get the authority to just adjourn a body?
Well, he seems to have it because they don't have a quorum. So
right, but he's not a member of the body, and in fact, he's a member of a competing branch of government. For him to come over and say, "I read that you guys can't be here. You're adjourned." Where do you get that authority? That's ridiculous to have that kind of authority.
So why do quorums exist at all then? Why does a quorum matter?
Because, let's say there's a blizzard and only 10 people can make it to the Capitol.
Yeah.
You can't just have those 10 people determine the whole legislature, right?
Right.
The quorum is not meant for this kind of shenanigan. The Democrats are trying to pull a fast one.
Well,
and even if you give them the ability to use this tactic, it's certainly not an ability they have to open up a legislative session because the law says they shall be there.
I don't think that it's really going to work for them, but just knowing what I know, it doesn't seem like anything's wrong with trying a tactic. I mean, it's annoying for sure.
I mean, this is all unprecedented, by the way. It's like we were arguing something. The point is the Republicans showed up today. Tucker says adjourn. Why now?
Yeah,
Why? Now is the time to get stuff passed. I kind of agree with you.
Yeah,
Why not sell this stuff? The Democrats didn't show up, right? Now what are they going to do? Go to court and argue that the courts need to determine when the legislature can convene? I mean, come on. At some point...
Or if Lisa Demuth is the actual speaker now. I mean, there's going to be so much that has to be worked out through the courts. And you were talking about the 54A race. If I had to guess why the Republicans decided not to touch the 54A race, if you look at the precedent from 1969, 1979, the way that those worked was the member was, and the information related to the case was referred to... it would be referred to a standing committee, and then that committee would either appoint a subcommittee or they would have members of both parties looking into the matter. What the Republicans could be waiting for is the fact that this court case is likely going to be appealed to the Minnesota Supreme Court. From the Minnesota Supreme Court information, they will take that and use that to send to the committee.
Why would they do that? That would be dumb.
Because the Supreme Court has the authority to immediately review election decisions.
But it's still the final judge is the House, so it's like
right. But I'm also saying that the Republicans wouldn't have necessarily been able to appoint a committee onto it because I don't even know if the Democrats have finalized the committee assignments for what things are going to be. So for them to have to assign something to a committee, it would be a little bit difficult, especially since the Democrats are not willing to participate. If the Democrats aren't willing to participate, Brad Tabke also has to have the ability to present his case to this committee.
Correct.
And to the body.
Of course, he should show up.
So, right, exactly. But of course, I guess it's a little bit unprecedented to see what if Tabke and these Democrats don't show up and don't take that opportunity. Does that opportunity still presented to him count?
Well,
so we're in...
Well, that goes back to Tucker saying adjourn. Why now? It's like, well, why not do it now? Democrats aren't going to show up on Tuesday either, or Wednesday.
The vibe that I'm getting from it is that the Republicans also think that this is none of this counted, because if they did, they should be there all day long doing everything they can.
No, I don't think they have to. And once again, you got to remember,
the opening day is always
Drew
a
Roach,
pretty
Tom
procedural
DePel.
thing.
These are new, Max Reimer. These are new people with families that are swearing in. It's a big day for them. Their family members are on the House floor, and so it kind of sucks for them to have their family there to do all this business. They say there's refreshments and snacks in the I think retirement room or somewhere, because it's kind of a day where it's usually not controversial.
Procedural, right?
It's procedural, right?
But since they have this, they should be using it as hard as they
Well,
can.
that's the thing, though, Dawson. I don't think they have to do it today because the Democrats are not going to show up. until they have a tie again, which is once House District 40B is decided.
Or after.
But this is the interesting thing. The Republicans had a resolution today, and let me go back, and this is Minnesota statute. Let's actually put it on the show here. I'm gonna dump it. I'm gonna put in the A4.
Brad says there was no voice vote to adjourn.
So yes,
it reads
so
to me
so
like
that's
you
it.
don't
So
need one
so
if there's no quorum.
Steve Simon just but he's determining there's no quorum.
Right.
But that's in contention because the clerk thinks there's a quorum, and the body thinks there's a quorum.
But does it matter?
He wouldn't recognize an appeal of the chair, which of course you have to recognize. When Harry Niska said, "I appeal the ruling of the chair," that has to be recognized and voted on.
Yeah, we don't want him being what's that guy's name?
Even
that,
if there's no
went to
quorum?
Morrison County.
Wait, but
I don't know.
But that doesn't
the
make
guy
any
from
sense.
CD8 that just decided I'm not going to recognize legitimate points of order.
But that
right.
doesn't.
Well, and
this is a
one of the people
foundational
in
thing.
Otter Tail. Remember, one of the people who was convening the BPOU. One of the miracles was refusing to give up the spot, even though the people were voting that they did not want him to serve as the chair. So, this kind of thing happens all the time. It is up to the body to decide who is going to chair their meeting. And while Simon has the initial responsibility to gavel it in, the House has the authority to remove him after that point if he is not willing to move forward the business of the body.
Let me just finish this point.
Yeah.
It's a democratic institution, right? Is the Minnesota House not a democratic institution?
Voted by the people.
Well,
right.
I'm asking
voted by
right?
majority vote.
It's a democratic institution. And so in a democratic institution, this is not only in the Minnesota House rules, not only in the Constitution, it's also in Mason's, which governs, it's a document that governs what happens and Robert's Rules of Orders is another competing rule set, but for democratic institutions. And majorities decide what happens. A majority of the body decides what happens. You don't have some member from another branch of government deciding what happens in that body. The body determines it. Now, we see the Republican establishment do this to grassroots activists all the time. The chair of a convention just ignores the will of the body of the people. We have countless examples of this. And we always argue in those cases, you're ignoring the body. The body determines the direction of convention. Any Democrat institution, the body is the determinant. So Steve Simon's nuts. He's way out of line by coming in and saying, I determine unilaterally you don't have a quorum, and I determine unilaterally this House is adjourned.
And
you do not have a right to do that because you do not belong to that institution.
But how can there be a voice vote on something if there's no quorum to vote on it?
There is a quorum.
But there wasn't.
No, there isn't. How do you know there's not a quorum?
Yeah, what is a quorum, Dawson?
What's a quorum, Dawson?
You guys have been told. What is a quorum?
It's a majority of the members.
And
that's 67.
How many is that? Yeah.
It's 67. How many people were there today?
67.
Why can Steve Simon say
because
that
Steve Simon is saying, there's 134 seats of the legislature.
Yeah.
But there's not 134 members because guess what? Democrats cheated in House District 40B, and that is a vacant position, as was read by the chief clerk or the clerk.
And Simon, as he said, 133 election certificates on
so the
file.
body is 133 members, and the majority of 133 is 67. Steve Simon's nuts, but we know what he's doing. He's playing power politics.
But clearly, he doesn't think that there's 133. He thinks there's 134.
Well, then he shouldn't have said what he said, because he literally said there's 133 election certificates today, which is actually, I don't know if he accidentally said that. Maybe it was an idiotic move on his part, but he acknowledged the fact that, yes, this is a body of 133 members. And if you really want to press why there's not 134, it's because the Democrats cheated and they got caught.
Well,
And by the way, Curtis Johnson still could have showed up today and argued that he's a member. He didn't do that. In fact, it's not just Curtis Johnson that didn't do it. No Democrat showed up. So if you guys got a problem with what happened, show up to work. You didn't show up. This is what happened. The body is, I argue, 67 members.
Who's the 134th one that they
there's a
think
vacancy, and this happens often in the legislature. There's a vacancy, and because there's a vacancy, that doesn't mean the legislature comes to a standstill. That's a ridiculous premise. So in other words, the Democrats, because they cheat and have a vacancy, can we allege that they could just always not show up to work and stop anything in the legislature? That's ridiculous.
I think it sounds like it is going to end up going to a court, even though the legislature rules it.
Maybe the court will say that they won't weigh into this decision because it's an other branch of government. Let's pull up the A4, Dawson. This is Minnesota Statute 204D.19, and we're going to look at subdivision subdivision 4, and K-Wall for life nails it on the head. I, for one, love government gridlock. Am I selfish? No, you're not. I actually think it's a great thing, right? Because I generally think when these guys meet, they do bad things. They attack our liberties. They spend money they don't have. This is, in some regards, good. Now, this is a legislative session. They actually have to pass the budget. I would say if this was the non-budget year, Republicans would have showed up and just try to sine die and just in the legislative session, because no good's going to happen.
Well, and Andy Parrish brings up a great point. He says, FYI, a quorum is not a majority, and that's a great point because, it's any body, whether that be a state central body, a convention, a legislative body, whatever it is, they get to determine within their rules what the quorum is. So it doesn't even necessarily have to be half the members. It could be 40% of the members, just like in your BPOU, you might say that the quorum is going to be 25 members, even if you have 120 members, just because you're worried that not everybody's going to show up to the BPOU meeting. So, all kinds of things like that happen. So Andy Parrish is making a good point, but in this case, 67 members is the quorum for the legislature.
I would disagree with my good friend, Andy, because this is actually in the Constitution. It's Article 4, Section 13, and it says quorum, a majority of each house constitutes a quorum to transact business.
I think Andy's point
But it does say, but a smaller number may adjourn from day to day and compel the attendance of absent members in the manner and under the penalties it may provide. Now, I would argue he's wrong on the fact
he's
it's a majority.
speaking generally of the word quorum, and in that case, he would be correct. But you're right that as defined, it is very clear that it's going to be 67 members.
Right. Now, once again, this goes back to what I was saying. A majority of the House, because the House has 133 members, you even heard Steve Simon say that, is 67. But I would argue that the House has 67 members because that's all who have presented their election certificates and sworn in. So I would argue quorum right now is 34. I wish Republicans actually made that announcement. Now let's go to Minnesota Section 204D.19, and this is governing special elections, and this is what we didn't know was going to happen, but this was really good. I think Harry Niska had this resolution, and so to back this up, and there's so many things going on. We're not even going to talk about the Minnesota Senate today, which is really interesting, because right now this afternoon, Nicole Mitchell, the alleged burglar senator, she's got a court hearing. She's doing it remotely, apparently, so she could attend the first day of the Senate. But she's got a court hearing for a felony burglary case, which is in 2 weeks. Jury selection is in less than 2 weeks from now. So this is subdivision 4. It says when a vacancy results from election contest, so this is 40B. If a vacancy results from a successful election contest, the governor shall issue 22 days after the first day of the legislative session a writ calling for a special election. Okay? Now, Tim Walz called a special election back in December for 40B. So you heard something real important. The Republicans put on the record in the Journal today. The Journal will show this, and I'm sure the courts have to listen to the Journal. In the Journal today, it says, we recognize a vacancy for House District 40B today. Then it gets to the second part of this. Unless the House in which the contest may be tried has passed a resolution which states that it will or will not review the court's determination of the contest. So they passed that resolution today. If the resolution states that the House will not review the court's determination, the writ shall be issued within 5 days of the passage of the resolution. So if they and I don't remember what the resolution said, but if it said, then they would be 5 days from now that Governor Walz can do the writ. And there's other law that says what the timeline is, but obviously you have to have time for, it's 5 days from when it gets posted, right? Remember that?
Right, yep. And also, the primary should be going on today. Of course, 40B, all of the Democrats dropped out of the race except for the endorsed Democrats. So that means that there's not going to be any kind of primary there. Paul Wickstrom is the only Republican candidate for 40B, so no primary on that one. But the Senate District 60 will have their primary today, both on the Democrat and on the Republican Party side. The Democrat Party side might just bring us another little gift if Mohammed Jama ends up taking the W, because with an 8-person primary, you never know what could happen. So considering the fact that he doesn't live in the district, he dropped out of the race, and the Senate Democrats did everything in their power to make sure that he would drop out of the race. If he were to somehow win that primary somehow, some way, it screws the Democrats up even longer, and I guess it would keep this temporary weak deal that Rhino Mark Johnson and Jeremy Miller have brought forward to us.
We're going to keep going for a little bit longer, but eventually what we're going to do is we're going to do our post show, and that's for our premium subscribers only. If you want to be a premium subscriber, $8 a month, or you get a month off if you do a year, so it's $88 a year. Help support the show and the things that we're doing, and you get access to the post show, which we got some stuff today to talk about, a lot of stuff today to talk about in the post show. This is where we get into some of the intel and even some of the rumors that are going around the Capitol and things that we know, things that we don't want to be public. So you get to be part of that if you're a subscriber. So what you need to do is go to truthhurtsnews.com and click on support us, and you get access to our locals channel. Otherwise, if you're on Rumble right now, which is the platform that's best to listen to the show, but we're also on YouTube and X and Facebook, but you can just click on the top and hit join. And what they'll do is they'll give you a free locals account, and we do our post show right after. You don't have to be watching live, by the way. If you're watching after the fact, you can still join and watch the post show after. And we also read your comments much more frequently on the post show. It's a great community. I love it. It's growing every day. Every time we do a post show, it's growing. I love it. Although Brad Ganser's in those comments. So, I mean, it's not all good, but it's mostly good, right? Also, we're brought to you by Warren Wessel, my good friend, who's a realtor with Keller Williams Realty. If you're looking to buy a home or sell a home, give my good friend Warren Wessel a call at 612-419-7453. And if you're buying a home, give the good guys at John Galt Mortgage a chance at financing that home. You could go johngaltmortgage.com. We're going into about 2 hours of the show, so I want to make sure I get the sponsors, the people that make this show possible, another shout out. Jesse, do we want to bring up a little bit of the Senate? I mean, the drama wasn't really there.
They're just talking. You know, it's just been speech after speech.
Are they still doing
Carrie
speeches?
Dietzig. Well, it's just about Carrie Dietzig.
That's right.
So that's all they're talking about. And yeah, it looks like they held some other non-controversial officer elections before the Senate president. You know, I might go back and rewatch the Senate president one myself just to see how that all shaked out. I presume that it was a 33-33, nothing unexpected, but it'd still be interesting to go back and look. So, but no, I don't think that we really necessarily need to pull up the Senate. It's they're just giving nice speeches about Dietzig right now.
All right, let's turn our focus to media. The point of this show is basically to expose corrupt politicians and lying corporate media. So I want to call something out, and then I want to go just do a Google search for how the media is reporting on what just happened in the Minnesota House. But Dawson, pull up my X account because I pinned this on the top. We called out KSTP's Tom Hauser for his fake news in saying that the Minnesota Constitution makes Steve Simon the presiding officer. It doesn't at all say that in the Minnesota Constitution. He never responded to it. The tweet went somewhat viral in my world. I'm not big on Twitter. So, but one of the reasons we call this out is in the media, when they tell one lie, they seem to spread. And here is, I was reading through the reports on the House, and I saw on Fargo, the Mighty 790 KFGO, they wrote, Simon's role in this, even though he's Secretary of State, is also laid out in the state constitution. Simon, a Democrat, will serve as the Speaker pro temp until the House agrees on a Speaker. It doesn't say, it's like the Speaker isn't even in the Constitution. All it says is presiding officer. They just completely make this shit up. Do you guys understand that? The media does not tell you the truth. They make shit up. But this is the problem is, I mean, anyone could just Google Minnesota Constitution or read it yourself, and I'll save you the time. Just read Article 4. That's what governs this whole thing. And nowhere in there does it say what they're saying it says, but they say it anyhow. It's just so dishonest. All right, Dawson, just pull up a Google or Bing, whatever you want to do, and just type in Minnesota House. I'm kind of curious what the coverage is right now by the mainstream media. Maybe it's too early for them to publish something. Yeah, hit news on the top. Oh, that works too. You can go, yeah, there you go. What we got? Minnesota House Republicans elect Speaker as DFL colleagues boycott session. That's the Pioneer Press. The AP is reporting House Democrats boycott opening day of Minnesota's legislative session to thwart, I'm guessing, the quorum. NBC News, Minnesota State House Democrats to stage walkout to bar new GOP Speaker.
Yahoo says Minnesota House Republicans override Simon, declare a quorum.
Yeah, let's click on that real quick. That's an interesting one. I like that headline.
Yahoo News.
Well, it's it's Fox 9.
9, yeah.
There you go. Let's read that. What are we doing here?
I don't know what happened.
Scroll up here so I can, or scroll down, I should say.
They have a paragraph.
Are you able to read that?
After Secretary of State Steve Simon sent the House into recess after saying there wasn't a quorum present, 67 Republicans present moved to remove Simon and instate Paul Anderson to take the roster. Anderson then declared that there was a quorum and Republicans voted Simon's adjournment out of order. Republicans proceeded with business with no Democrats in the chamber. Democrats have made good on their promise not to show up on the first day of the Minnesota legislature.
You know, it's important. Let's go back real quick to what the statute says. And this is what the statute 3.05, it says, at noon of the day appointed for convening the legislature, the members shall meet in their respective chambers. The lieutenant governor shall call the Senate to order and the Secretary of State the House of Representatives. In the absence of either officer, the oldest member present shall act in the officer's place. So what I would argue, and I'm sure the Republicans are arguing here, is when Steve Simon said you're adjourned and didn't listen to, literally, verbally, you heard Harry Niska challenge the ruling speaker, right?
Yep.
And then vacated the chamber, which is maybe the mistake he made. It says, in the absence of either officer, so I would then argue he was absent, right? The oldest member, Paul Anderson, shall act in the officer's place, which he did. The person.
Pull up what Yahoo News was saying again, because maybe what it was saying was when we couldn't hear the audio of what it was saying. But let's see here. The 67 Republicans present moved to remove Simon and instate Paul Anderson to take on the roster. So I don't know if we necessarily saw them making a motion, or we definitely didn't hear them making a motion to instate Paul Anderson. All we saw was Paul Anderson walking up there. So maybe that was what was going on. Obviously, we didn't have audio to be able to hear whether or not there was a vote taken on that. But it's not necessarily that a vote was needed anyway, because it was properly defined in statute already.
Are you talking about when he was walking up?
Right, before then, right.
LEP, can't we the people file something in line with the Constitution? And we also got a Chad L. Weber. I think Waltzy has his bars for refreshment, the lemon bars.
Yeah.
That's a funny one. Yeah, LEP and Chad Weber. I don't think I've seen you guys in the comment section before, so welcome to the show. Drought tolerant. Rules Committee consists of all Republicans as assigned by least to the Speaker, ? It shouldn't, but once again, I don't think Democrats are choosing not to participate. Do you guys understand that? If you're choosing not to participate in the Minnesota House, why would they be on the Rules Committee? They should be on the Rules Committee, but they're choosing not to participate. So why would they be on the Rules Committee? Seems goofy. So they should. I hope Republicans play it straight-laced. I don't think that they should do anything corrupt. But if Democrats aren't going to show up, why would they be participating in committees? I don't think is this a crazy one? Should the Democrats be paid right now? They didn't show up. Imagine not showing up your first day at your job. So, and they never took the oath of office, which is following them showing up and presenting their election certificate. Man, the arguments for the Republicans are so huge on this one. They shouldn't cave. By the way, there was negotiations going late last night and then apparently early this morning between the House Democrats and the House Republicans. And I'm like, my God, if the House Republicans cave on this one, like, you got everything to your back. Like, what do you think the average guy in Minnesota is going to think? So you're telling me the Democrats didn't show up to the first day of the legislative session that they were required to, and they're still getting paid? Yeah, I think they're wrong on that. Yeah, I think the most common people are going to think that way, right? They're not going to be like, oh, yeah, that's the right. Only partisan hacks would think that was a legitimate thing to do. And for what controversial thing? It's not like they're passing some like monumental bill. They're appointing, by the way, the first black woman Speaker of the House, the first minority to be the Speaker of the House. Should be praised by the Democrats, right? Didn't we want our first black woman as president of the United States? Isn't that what they were saying a couple months ago about Kamala? Well, why doesn't that apply to Lisa Demuth?
Wait, so why are the Democrats doing it right now? What
power hungry? Politics is adjudication of power.
No, but like, what power are they missing out on right now?
Well, so you have to understand that they're in this predicament. So, okay, so November election happens in 67, all right? That's crazy.
Yeah.
It hasn't happened since 1979. So how do you navigate a tied House? Turns out you have some power sharing agreement. Oh, I have to note, this is the first time in our country's history where there is two branches of the legislature that are in a tie. Isn't that interesting? Or I shouldn't say that, or in a power sharing situation. I mean, the House will be in a tie eventually when this special election is determined. But then the Senate might not be.
Power sharing
This whole dynamic is insane.
54A, right.
Yeah, this whole dynamic is so insane because the Senate is a tie right now because of the death of Gary Dietzig. Excuse me. What was I saying, Dawson? I was answering your question.
I was asking about why now, why November election.
So it was a tie after November election.
Yeah.
The reason we're in this predicament is because the Democrats had someone try to cheat in an election. He has to establish residency. It's very clear they have to have residency 6 months in advance. He did not. He actually lied on his affidavit of candidacy. Is he even being prosecuted for the lies? That's another question. But anyhow, court found that he was not a resident, and therefore he cannot take office. Okay, so that's why they're in the minority. They are upset because before that actually went in front of court and was decided, by the way, it could have been decided today too. Actually, it was decided today. But before that was that happened, they had to have some kind of power sharing agreement. So they organized, like, you guys have the speaker this day, we have the speaker the next day, we have the same amount of members on a committee. Some committees will have a Republican lead, some will have a Democrat lead. How do you navigate that world? It's a crazy world. You don't know how to navigate it. And so they had some general agreement, but the Democrats had a cheater, and they caused themselves to be in the minority. And so why wouldn't the Republicans show up? Nothing changed on the Republican side. Why wouldn't they continue to show up on day one and all 67 members vote for the person they want, and all 66 members of the Democrats vote who they want as speaker? And it just so happens because they cheated on the Democrat side, they have less votes, and the speaker will be Lisa Demuth.
So the guy,
and that's what they have an issue with.
So the guy who cheated, what is happening with that spot? Is there a
so that was what that resolution was. It's a vacant position as of today.
That's what they just passed.
That's what they just passed.
Okay, so what is it like before that? Before they passed?
Well,
something on it?
This is actually something we don't know, and we don't have a good answer to this. But technically, the seat was held by Jamie Becker Finn. I always say Jamie Becker Finn, right? And until, this is what I would argue, until somebody takes that new seat, Jamie Becker Finn, or until they swear in a new legislature, she is still the current member of that seat.
The previous one.
The previous one. Okay. She decided not to run again, okay? But also there are people that get defeated. But they are the legislature. Like if there's a flood and the governor has to call a special session to pass flood damage or whatever, on December 1, January 1, he would still call Jamie Becker Finn up to the Capitol.
Okay.
Unless she resigned, but she never did. So the vacancy didn't occur until today because that seat was still technically in the hands of Jamie Becker Finn until the new legislature gavels in, which it did today, and then it's a vacant seat. That causes 133 members.
What's a vacant seat? Because of the resolution that was just passed, it's now a vacant seat?
Well, it was a vacant seat regardless because Curtis Johnson didn't challenge the ruling by court. But he technically could have. He could have taken his election certificate to the House today. So what happens? Okay, let's get into the nuts and bolts of things. The Democrat establishment goes, you fucked up. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to make sure Governor Walz, we're going to make sure you don't challenge this so Governor Walz can call a special election right away because we don't want the Republicans having a majority because it's all about power for them, right? And so
it's about power
Governor Walz, clearly not following the law, decided I'm going to call a special election when I can't. And the reason he did is because Curtis Johnson resigned his representative-elect seat. That's the dumbest thing. I've never even heard something like that. Well, how do you resign a representative-elect? That's not a position.
Right.
So he doesn't have a position to resign until today. And technically it was out of his hands because he didn't challenge it. Jamie Becker Finn was still the representative of that district. Now, I argue the Democrats could have pulled this shenanigan. They could have had Jamie Becker Finn say, I resign, and maybe they had some merits on that one, but that's not what happened.
I do think it's interesting. I wish that it's really confusing, but I wish that Democrats showed up and put up their fight where we could see it, that would be cool. Because I want to know more of what their side is saying. And like obviously, it's all they all want power. Literally everybody in that thing wants power. So I'm not, that's what politicians do. So I wish they showed up at the very least, because they should have put up some kind of voice for what they're talking about. I don't know. It's confusing.
We have a comment here. It says, let me see if this is true here. Are you seeing it?
If it's what you're talking, I don't know if we're talking about the same thing.
Pull up A5, Dawson. This is alleged that maybe House member, let's see, this is Walter Hudson. I don't follow the logic that Tabke should resign, but if he doesn't, he should be seated. That may be because I also don't agree with dispensing with a secret ballot and determining elections through guesswork and public disclosure of how people voted, violating precedent.
What is he saying?
That is crazy.
I don't know what he's saying. What is he trying to say?
He's saying that he would seat Brad Tabke because he doesn't want to go off of the court results. So that's insane.
Hold on. This is a reply.
Show replies from Jeff Kolb right there.
Well, hold on. It's a reply to a comment.
Right, and it's a reply to Jeff.
Yeah, so go to the original comment. In a vacuum, if I were a member of the Minnesota House, I would vote to seat Tabke based on the facts in the case. However, we don't live in a vacuum. We live in the real world where the DFL has behaved way outside. Oh, this is a long tweet from a moron. That guy's not a very smart dude. Anyhow, Walter responds, I don't follow logic that Tabke should resign, but if he doesn't, he should be seated. That may be because I also don't agree with dispensing with secret ballot and determining elections through guesswork and public disclosure. I don't know what Walter's saying.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense because just because you remove Brad Tabke, that doesn't mean Aaron Paul takes the seat. Then no, that means that a special election needs to be taking place. So it's not about the secret ballot being revoked. We're also against that too, Walter. We want to see that Brad Tabke doesn't get seated because of the fact that these voters should not be forced to say how they voted. So it's unbelievable that if he wants to side with the Democrats, he's already showing his true colors, the fact that he's attacking Action for Liberty constantly. He's showing his true colors that he is just another establishment hack. And if he wants to side with the Democrats to go against election integrity, Walter's just going to reveal himself.
This would be bad if they're trying to cave in. I do have some breaking news, and let me just quickly validate it, but I believe this is that Nicole Mitchell, in the case, the judge has denied the request of her lawyers to delay the trial. So that means it's taking place in less than 2 weeks here. I'm seeing this on Twitter, so I would just want to confirm it real quick.
Is that going to be in January then?
Yes, and so she has already stated she would not vote. So actually Republicans would kind of have a majority during that part. Well, I guess, no, I take that back. They might have a majority for a day or two. Are they challenging the Senate District 60 election? I can't even remember.
I don't think that the leadership is. No,
It's
I
a
don't
lot
think.
of
I don't
moving
think that
pieces
Mark
here.
Johnson gives a rip.
Let's see here. I want to see this confirmed here. Sorry, I probably shouldn't have even piped up until I get this thing confirmed.
We're gonna have to be careful with the post-show length because 3-hour limit apparently.
No, okay, we'll go to the post show after this here. I'm so sorry. Now I really want to correct this. See, this is the problem. I was getting on Twitter reading. I fell for the bait. Thanks, Bill Dingsfin. Fell for the bait, and then I get into the Twitter rabbit hole. So let me just see here. See, I'm not seeing anyone confirming this here. And so I shouldn't have read that. Dang it. That'd be interesting. But I am not seeing on here, Jesse, anyone confirming that that is a true story. I don't even want to...
Which part?
That Nicole Mitchell, the judges determined in Mitchell's case. And I don't want to... I don't even want to read the source because I can't believe I actually took that. I feel dumb now. It's probably just fake news. Yeah, I don't see anything here. Alpha News, Democrat senators spotted in Minnesota Senate chambers on the first day of the session wearing a mask, course. She has a hearing in her felony burglary trial at 2 p.m. today and is asked to appear remotely from her office. Okay, that's just fake news. Shame on this person.
Rip.
This person should know better. You know who I was reading? Dustin Grage. Because it came up on my line. He goes, breaking, Minnesota judge has just denied Senator Mitchell request to delay her trial for felony burglary. Like, what is he talking about? Well, he's got a video linked here. But I don't see this at all being on here. Like, what are you, just complete fake news? Tisk, tisk, tisk. Well, luckily, we quickly corrected that. I'm not saying that that's not going to happen, but I kind of am scared that they will indeed allow that to be delayed. I'm just going to check one other source here, but that might just be complete fake news. Look at that. I fell for it. Unbelievable. It was a KSDP report that it was tied to, so let's just see. And of course, a lot of this is on the Capitol. I'm not seeing anything. Becker County Attorney objects to Senator Mitchell request to delay burglary trial. Yeah, it's fake news. Complete fake news. Good job there, buddy. Check. Like, what, you just make stuff up and post on there for like shock value? Like, why would you do that?
That's exactly why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you want to be like.
That's
why would you do that? That's so dumb. I fell for it, but like now anything you say you can't be trusted. Like if you just completely make that up, nowhere's that being reported. And it was reported 3 hours ago. Like it's complete fake news. You know, I should just call him out for that. Where is this tweet? Go to, just pull up Twitter real quick, Dawson. I don't even think I follow this guy. Just type in Nicole Mitchell on the right. That's how I found it. Like, I don't even follow this guy, but it was showed up on my feed. Go to latest. Scroll up to the top. Scroll down a little bit. Keep going. She's got a nice graphic for her first day session. Keep going right there. See, breaking. This is 3 hours ago. Breaking, Minnesota judges just denied Senator Nicole Mitchell request to delay her trial for felony burglary. The trial will begin at the end of January. The Minnesota is currently tied in a power sharing agreement. This is huge. He just completely made that up.
They love the breaking.
I know.
This is huge.
It was like, I didn't even think about that when I read that because it came across my news feed. The trial or the hearing's not even until like 2 o'clock this afternoon. Brad says, Jesse, tell Jake to move on. Sorry, I hate fake news. I'm like Trump. I hate fake news. How dare he? Jeez. All right. Well, anyhow, fascinating stuff. So if you guys joined late, we live streamed the whole Minnesota House floor session, and Republicans did do essentially what they needed to do to stop this shenanigan by the Democrats where they were going to try to hold up a quorum. What didn't happen today was a contested 54A race, and, you know, reading Walter Hudson's comment, maybe Republicans aren't aligned on that. It's kind of hard. I mean, listen, 20 ballots thrown out into the trash in a district that was won.
If Walter gets in the way
votes.
of this, he's going to be primaried and removed. I mean, you're laughing. It's true. I mean, he's getting in the way of Republicans from taking control. He's getting in the way of election integrity because of what? It's you know, Walter's. I think honestly, it's because Action for Liberty has been leading on this issue. He doesn't want to stand with Action for Liberty anymore. He wants to try to be his own man, and so I guess that means he's going to do the wrong thing to stand alone. So go ahead, be our guest, Walter. Screw this entire thing up, and then you're going to be the reason why the Republicans don't have a majority.
All right, well, let's get into some of the behind-the-scenes stuff in our post-show. Thank you for all the new viewers today. This was definitely what we thought it was going to be, a constitutional crisis that Steve Simon and the Democrats tried to create, and the Republicans, I think, did a pretty good job steering it back towards the powers given to the legislative branch, and they conducted business today. Probably not enough business. They should have conducted more business, but they did conduct business today, so that's good. And they'll be meeting again tomorrow. I wish I could do a show tomorrow, but I got meetings. But they'll be gaveling in tomorrow again at noon. We'll cover it no matter what, even if it's on Thursday. So we'll be back again on Thursday at 1 o'clock at our normal time. If you want to join us on the post show, if you're not already a premium subscriber, go to Truth Hurts News right now. Click on the top and click on support us. And for $8 a month or $88 a year, you could be a premium subscriber and get special access to our post show. Or you could just do on Rumble, you can click on join on the very top. The reason we like to be on Rumble, by the way, is YouTube likes to censor us every once in a while. So got to be careful about those censors. Although Facebook's going to be open game now, right? Mark Zuckerberg's on our side. All is good these days. Anyhow, we'll be starting the post show in 1 minute. To everyone else, we'll see you back here on Thursday at 1 o'clock. Take care.